throw your lot in and play senior international football with somebody. That should be the end of it.
That's brilliant! Oh my goodness me! You will not see a better try.
Who will be All-Ireland champions? Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
OTB Live. Never miss the action right here. Every Saturday and Sunday on Off the Ball.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yes, and it's Friday morning. It's 7:30 and a nice sunny Friday morning, it has to be said. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Slight change of time, as you'll have noticed over the last week. Your schedule has changed, and so has ours. So we're going to be bringing you lots of stuff between now and actually 11 o'clock this morning. It's a bumper Friday OTB AM for you today. And from 7:30 every morning, we're going to bring you, of course, the best bits from Off the Ball over the previous hours. And this morning, that's a bit of John Giles. Give you some details on that in just a moment. And then from 8 o'clock, Owen and myself are going to walk you through a pretty interesting show. This morning, we're going to give you a small flavour of that. Now, John Giles, coming up in just a couple of moments' time, his all-time Arsenal 11. There's some tough calls to be made in that. And we'll get the best of John from the show last night coming your way in just a couple of moments' time. We kick off then at 8 o'clock. Myself and Owen will be getting stuck into the back pages very early in the show, where we're going to talk you through a lot of GAA and Premier League. There's the main stories across a lot of the newspapers this morning, so we'll bring you those from both here in the UK just after 8 o'clock. We have a crappy quiz coming your way at 9:15. We have one man who's going for 4 in a row. Can it be done? Unprecedented territory, I'm led to believe. We'll see. That's at about 9:15. We'll ask Sarah Rowe, the Mayo and AFL player, just after 9 o'clock, how's the head in our brand new series. Classic Game Club will come your way just after 9 o'clock. This is Kieran Donaghy and Owen in conversation about the flu game in the late 90s. Was he sick, and where did he pull the performance from? I suppose probably the two big questions there. The two lads will get into just after 9 o'clock. We'll have our player ratings, as always, just before 10 o'clock there as well. And also, I mentioned we're on air until 11 o'clock this morning with a very special challenge coming up after time at the Mayo boxer, Ray Moylette. You might have seen this if you've been following both ours and his social channels over the last 48 hours or a little bit more. He's going to do 1,000 push-ups live from his front room. We're going to have special guests as well joining us across that hour as he attempts to do 1,000 push-ups in an hour. Special guests as well, and all for some very worthy causes. So we'll see you at 8 o'clock first, though. I mentioned the very latest in our Thursday night series with John Giles, picking the greatest 11s. We've already done Spurs, Liverpool and Manchester United, and there's John picking his all-time Arsenal 11. Enjoy.
Let's get into the Arsenal all-time 11. I put up online earlier today that you were going to be doing this, and already it has sparked quite a bit of debate when you look at the sheer amount of talent they had, particularly in midfield and attacking positions. So I think it'll be interesting what your final selection is. Let's start, though, in goal. The options for Arsenal then over the last, and remember, we're going back all the way to 1960, the likes of Pat Jennings, Bob Wilson, David Seaman, Jens Lehmann. Who have you gone with?
I've gone with David Seaman.
Right.
I love Pat, as you know, Pat Jennings. But Pat, wasn't there as long as David Seaman, and Pat did have his great years with Spurs as well, but he was a terrific goalkeeper. Bob Wilson was terrific. In 1971, they won the double in 1971, Nathan. And we were challenging them all the way at that particular year at Leeds. But they did brilliantly. And Bob Wilson was a major player for them that year. It was the best season he ever. He wasn't a great goalkeeper, Bob Wilson, but he was a great goalkeeper that year, Nathan.
Right.
That season, he was fantastic. But I've gone with David Seaman because he gave tremendous service to Arsenal.
I'd imagine that was a tough decision because we spoke about Pat Jennings last week. He was obviously in your all-time Tottenham 11.
Yeah.
And the way you spoke about him, just how good he was.
I put Pat in, and I crossed him off. That's how close. Right. I love Pat. I mean, I said to you last week, Pat was the best goalkeeper, in my opinion, of that era. Whether it be David Seaman, but David Seaman was a terrific servant, and they were very successful at that particular time as well.
Yeah, there've been so many great Arsenal teams throughout those eras. From, as you mentioned there, that team Bob Wilson played, the double-winning team of '71, the team, real exciting team full of Irish players in late '70s, early '80s, to the George Graham side that were so strong defensively, Arsene Wenger and the Invincibles. It's probably actually only in the last 7-8 years where there's been this real decline, where there aren't too many players in contention for this 11.
No, and I'd have to say, like I said last couple of weeks when we were doing the teams, these players that I've picked, again, like in 4 or 5 years' time, we might have another group of players coming in that would take their place. But I'm trying to balance it with the service that they've given to the club, Nathan. You know, there was a couple of players coming in for a year or two, were very, very good players. But the players I picked, and this is my principle in doing it every week so far, is the service that they actually gave to the club at a particular time.
So let's go through your back four then, starting at right back.
I'm starting with Peter Storey.
Okay.
Now, Peter Storey became a midfield player, but he started, when I played against him originally, in that he was a right back, and Eddie Gray was our left winger at Leeds. And I used to feel sorry for Eddie. Peter Storey was a hard nut.
Right.
And he was well able to do it, Nathan. And I used to feel sorry for Eddie. And then he moved into midfield and was marking me.
Okay.
And after that, he was quiet lad. He never said a dicky word on the pitch, Nathan. He had this mad stare, though. You know, he frightened the life out of you. But he could play. He was a great marker. He was the best marker I came across playing, man marking, in the middle of the field. Played for England in the middle. Played for England at right back as well.
Yeah.
I only met him once. I played in the 3 versus the 6 when we were entering the common market. And he was in that. And it's the first time I really got him on a social occasion. He still never said a word. But he didn't kick me. That was okay. Actually, he was a good lad overall, but he was a good player. He was a good, steady player. Very good, steady player.
The obvious modern alternative would have been a Lee Dixon.
He wouldn't be as hard as Storey.
Right.
No, he wouldn't be as hard as Storey. Storey was, I'd say, he was the best. When he moved to midfield, now he was the best man marker I came across. He could play, but he was a tough nut, Nathan.
So Peter Storey is your right back. Who's your left back?
My left back is Bob McNabb.
Right.
You might know about Bob McNabb. Played for them in their double winning team at that particular time. He played for England as well. He was a steady player, good footballer. He came from Huddersfield. Actually, when I went to Leeds first, we played Huddersfield within the second division. He made his debut against me. Okay. And he did well. I hardly got a kick of the ball against me. He was a very, very good player, understated, got on with the job, good lad, but did the job well, Nathan.
Again, left back must have been such a difficult selection, because you think of the back four from George Graham, where you had Dixon on the right, Winterburn on the left, Ashley Cole, who for a lot of people is potentially the best left back of the Premier League era, and Kenny Sampson, who I was looking at earlier. Like Kenny Sampson, his first 7 seasons at Arsenal was in the PFA Team of the Year every single season.
It's a very difficult pick, as you can imagine. And I do have all those players down, Ashley Cole and Lee Dixon and these players in my special mention, for example. You know, and it's very difficult, Nathan. You know, like there would be people who would be fans of those particular players. Now I'm going back a while, and so Bob McNabb wouldn't be as familiar to some of the players. I'm going back to the 60s and that. Yeah. But he did play regularly in. They did win the double. Don't forget, years ago when Bob McNabb and Frank McClintock and these guys were playing in the team, which was a huge achievement, because in those days, Nathan, there was more teams likely to win the league than now. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And there was more competition, in my opinion, to win the league in those days than there is now, because you got the top 6, and it hasn't been out the top 6 for years and years, you know? At that time, there was about 6, 7, 8, actually between 66, I think, and 73, 7 different teams won the league. Yeah, it was certainly far more competitive. And listen, it's obviously a testament to Bob McNabb that he gets selected ahead of those players as well, and shows just how good he was. He was a good player, Nathan. Yeah. So your 2 centre halves, who did you go for? I went for David O'Leary as one of the centre halves. Dave was a very, very good player. Got about the job quietly, but did it well. You know, I came across Dave. Actually, I capped Dave for against England with Kevin Keegan playing, and he didn't give Keegan a kick. This was a friendly match which we drew 1-1, and David was a young lad coming into it. He marked Kevin Keegan out of the game. He was a big, lanky lad in those days, David, but he covered the ground brilliantly, very well balanced, very, very quick, and was good enough on the ball to use it well enough. David was a top-class player.
Yeah, an incredible career at Arsenal, 18, 19 years, selected week in, week out. As a footballer, like when you looked at O'Leary, was it his defensive mindset or his footballing ability that you went with?
Well, no, mostly he's defensive, Nathan. When I'm looking at defenders, I'd always look at them defensively first. But he was good enough on the ball to use it and use it well. And when you're playing in a good team as a defender like David, you don't have to do too much on the ball, Nathan, because midfield players should look for it and make it. In other words, defenders win the ball, they give it to the guys that make position for it in the middle of the field, midfield players particularly. So they shouldn't be called on to be knocking 40 or 50-yard passes. That's a bonus if you can do that. Yeah. If you go to Beckenbauer's time, he could do everything like that.
Yeah.
Now, David wasn't a terrific player in distributing the ball, but he was good enough not to lose the ball, which was the main thing. But defensively, excellent.
So you have a lot of options alongside him, from Sol Campbell, Steve Bold, Martin Keown, Frank McClintock, Tony Adams. Who did you go for?
I went for Tony Adams.
Right. What separates him?
Tony Adams was a really, really leading player. I think he was the best defender of his day, Nathan. He could use the ball okay. He wouldn't be as good on the ball as David O'Leary. But he could defend really well. And he was a real leader in that team. If there was any tackling to be done, he was in there getting headers in, scored a few valuable goals for them as well. I think he was a top-class player. I have to mention Frank McClintock, by the way. Frank McClintock was a midfield player originally that went into the central back position and, again, captained the team when they won the double. And I was very nearly putting him in the team, to be quite honest, Nathan. But certainly Adams, I would not leave out of a best-ever Arsenal team.
Yeah, and was part of the 89 team that won the league, the 91 team, and then continuing into the Wenger era. And in fact, I think certainly for my age group, you probably look at Adams slightly differently because he had that time with Wenger when he got to show more of that footballing side of his game.
Oh, definitely. Oh, he could play, Nathan. Like when you have a defender, like we talked about Norman Hunter earlier. Norman was a terrific defender, but he had enough ability to come out. He wouldn't. You don't expect defenders to be beating players. Well, some of them could, but they were few and far between. The main thing you're looking at, can he defend? Is he a good defender? And Adams did that, but when Adams was on the ball, he didn't give the ball away, Nathan. He could use it, but he wasn't hitting 40 and 50-yard passes. But the main thing was defending, and he was a real defender.
All right, so the goalkeeper, David Seaman, a back four, Peter Storey, David O'Leary, Tony Adams and Bob McNabb. We might actually take a quick break, John, before we get in to the midfielders and the attackers.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
Moncrief.
On the line is the first Vice President of the European Parliament, Mairead McGuinness. Mairead, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, and I'm glad this isn't a video call because of the makeup issue referenced.
Right, are you in your tracky bottoms as well?
Well, I think people are two halves at the moment. There's the professional, head and shoulders, and then there's the rest.
Yes, right, fair enough.
Moncrief.
With the all-new Dacia Duster.
Weekdays from 2 p.m. on News Talk.
At Bank of Ireland, we want our customers and colleagues to stay safe and well. Now more than ever, it's important to know that your financial well-being is our priority. We have a range of supports available for our personal and business customers with easy online applications. Our dedicated staff are working to support you. But if you're cocooning or self-isolating at home, you can now nominate a family member or trusted friend to do your banking for you. We're also giving a €1 million emergency fund to support our communities right now. To find out more, visit bankofireland.com. Take care. Bank of Ireland. Bank of Ireland is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Big things happen when you're being supported. At FBD Insurance, we get that. Our Car Protect sale is now on at fbd.ie. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Acceptance criteria, terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
In these uncertain times, we discover the best in each other and in our communities. Your local community pharmacy is working hard in difficult circumstances to supply the medicines you need and the advice you trust. We are asking people to be understanding of small delays and, if possible, phone ahead to make arrangements for collecting your prescription. Your local community pharmacy. Always here for you. Brought to you by the Irish Pharmacy Union.
Your local Expert Electrical store is just one of 67 family-owned stores in communities nationwide. Wherever you live, we're here to help you. Whatever you need, essential home appliances, local store opening times, advice or delivery options. Visit expert.ie for the latest updates. We're Expert Electrical. We're here to help you.
In these difficult times, many businesses are still very much open for business and still need to communicate with their customers. Radio can help. Right now, it's playing an even bigger role keeping people in Ireland informed and entertained. And the latest technology means that even with social distancing, radio ads can still be made and broadcast safely. Radio. Business as usual, even when it's not business as usual. For more information, email info@fmjunction.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
You're welcome back. It's Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you. And John Giles on the line as well, picking his all-time Arsenal 11. He's gone for David Seaman in goals, a back four of Peter Storey, David O'Leary, Tony Adams and Bob McNabb. Let's get on to the midfielders, John, and I don't envy you because there have been so many wonderful midfielders for Arsenal through the years. I was saying earlier on that you could literally just go with a Perez, Petit, Vieira, Overmars and nobody'd have an issue until you start thinking of, well, where does Liam Brady fit in? So what formation have you gone for first?
I've gone for 4-3-3.
So three midfielders.
Three midfielders, yeah.
Who have you gone with?
I've gone with Fabregas.
Right. That's
Fabregas. I think for a period in England, he was the best midfield player in the Premiership, Nathan. He could get on the ball. He could, especially in the middle of the midfield, he could dictate it. I think it was a shame that he left Arsenal, or maybe, I don't know whether he had to leave at that particular time. Wenger brought him in, as we know, but I think he became a top-class player for the few years that he was at Arsenal.
And incredible the way at such a young age he was that player that you talk about, with the technique, with the ability to control games from midfield. Like pretty much played a full season at 17 in the centre of midfield for a brilliant Arsenal team.
Yeah, he was. I don't think he marched on to greatness. I think maybe leaving Arsenal stopped that, Nathan. But I think he had the ability to do it. As you say, at 17, he had all the right ideas. He had the technique to do it. He got better with Arsenal. And then I think they were following a programme, or Wenger had to follow a programme. There was finances involved. And he left. I think he was marching on to greatness at that particular time.
The fact that maybe he didn't fully get to that level of greatness, and as good as he was, and he didn't really enjoy much success. There was an FA Cup win. He was part of a team that got to a Champions League final. But unlike a lot of the names, even the ones I was mentioning there, like he never was able to bring them to a league title. Did any part of that come into your reckoning?
No, because I think it was beyond his control. I think when they were going for the new stadium, Nathan, I think the future changed for Arsenal. I don't think Wenger could then. I think Wenger went for the policy of the big stadium, the stadium being the main concern, that he couldn't afford the best players. He had to sell Fabregas. He had to do things that at the time Alex Ferguson didn't have to do, for example. Alex Ferguson wasn't bothered about the new stand and anything else. He was getting the money to buy the best players available. And I think Wenger, with the wage, the wage structure, and that all changed to accommodate the new stadium. That's when they parted ways, Wenger and Ferguson. Ferguson wasn't bothered about a new stand. He was better about getting the best players in. I think Wenger approached it in a different way. He said, I'm the manager of the club. It's not just the playing situation I'm a manager of. I'm a manager of the club. And he went a certain way to make sure that they had the money to build a new stadium. He stopped buying the best players, and he had to sell a few players, Nathan. That was the difference at that time. I think had he been in the same position attitude as Ferguson, he would have bought good players surrounding Fabregas. But that stopped.
Yeah.
And he then couldn't compete with Manchester United.
So Fabregas, the first midfielder in. Who else have you gone for?
I've gone for Patrick Vieira.
Straightforward selection?
Oh, no problem. He was one of the best, Nathan. He was a warrior. He could play. He could score goals. And this was the time when Wenger first came to the club. You see, I think when any manager comes to a club, you usually have spot 2 or 3 players, Nathan, in other places or maybe in clubs you were with that you could get. And he certainly did that. He got Vieira and he got Henry in two at least at that particular time. Where I think they both were at Juventus, were they? And they weren't doing very well. So he got them in. But Vieira was a real player. He could do everything. He could tackle, he could get stuck in, he could play, he could score a few goals for you. So he was a really top-class midfield player.
Yeah, and the rivalry with Roy Keane just added to it.
Oh, well, I think he was trying to bully somebody, Vieira, which he would. I think he tried to bully anybody when they were coming down the pit.
Yeah, Gary Neville.
And Gary Neville, he wasn't a bad judge then, was he? And Keane stuck up for him.
Yeah.
You know, like Keane was captain of the team, and he wouldn't bow to anybody either. So there was a right battle between those two. You know, they were two great players, but Vieira, I think, was a great player and a huge signing for Arsenal and influence at that particular time. So
Fabregas and Vieira, who's the final selection?
I've gone for Liam Brady.
All right, I was starting to get a little bit worried there.
Yeah, we had to get something beautiful in there, and Liam I would always regard as a beautiful player. Easy on the eye, Nathan. You know, get on his left foot. He can dribble. He could go past people, get the pass in. I thought Liam was a wonderful player.
Was he a midfielder? Was he a midfielder who was effective in every game?
Yeah. Well, he played left-hand side of midfield. I don't think he was capable of playing in the Vieira's position as the general of midfield. I don't think Liam had that in him, but he had this beautiful approach that you get the ball out to Liam, and he'll do something on it, because he could beat players. You don't get many midfield players now or then who could go past people, and it's sometimes the most effective thing in the game. You go past your opposition, and Liam could do that. You know, he was a beautiful player. He wasn't a warrior like Vieira, and he was suited to the left-hand side midfield. I don't think he was able to play middle of midfield to dictate the game. So you had to get the ball out to Liam, and then he could really do his stuff.
He obviously
do it brilliantly.
Yeah, he obviously
and easy on the eye, Nathan. You know, easy on the eye. When beautiful control, he had a good swerve. He could get a good shot in. He could make a pass. So you know, he was great down that left-hand side of midfield.
Yeah, he was a scorer of brilliant goals.
Yes, he wasn't a regular scorer because he was a midfield player, and he wasn't a great tackler, but he did his best. He had an honest go at it, you know. But you could live with Liam for that, because once he got on the ball, he didn't lose it, Nathan. And he could beat players, he could make goals, he could score a few goals. Now, Liam was a top-class player.
What was he like in training?
He was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had this style about him that he looked like he was struggling a bit. But once he got on the ball, and then he could turn on this pace from nowhere to go past people. It's just the way he looked. You know, he was sort of casual looking in his general running. But once he got on the ball, you know, he turned from the ugly duckling into this beautiful swan. And it was beautiful on the ball, beautiful to watch, easy on the eye, and very, very effective.
You're saying all the right things if he's listening in anyways, John.
I fell out with him last week.
Wait till you're doing your Arsenal one with him.
We're pals
you're
again
back
now.
You're back again. So your midfield is Fabregas, Vieira and Brady. I got to say, I'm surprised Perez isn't in there. I would have thought that Perez was very much your type of player.
Well, he was, Nathan, but again, you've got three picks.
Who are you leaving out?
You know, lots of people listening say, why wasn't he in? Why wasn't he in? It's a very difficult job. No, it's not a job. I mean, I enjoy it and then having a chat about it. But I can understand people saying, well, he was my favourite. He was my favourite. And you very seldom get two people having sharing the same opinion over football, Nathan. You know, that's why people are interested. I'm giving you my pick. A lot of people will have different picks altogether.
I suspect,
and I understand that, you know.
I suspect a lot of people might go along with your picks for your front three. Do you want to run through them? Yeah, I've got Ian Wright, who I think was a terrific player. What a career he had! He came in from late non-league football quite late to Crystal Palace. I think he was about 26, 27, 28 when he moved to Arsenal. But what a difference he made to me! He was absolutely brilliant. My own opinion on when he went to play for England, or when he did play for England, he didn't play quite as well as he could have played. I think he was too anxious to please, Nathan. Right.
That was my opinion with England. With Arsenal, he was very comfortable. He scored brilliant goals. He was an absolute brilliant goal scorer and worked quite hard as well. I wouldn't have any doubts about putting him in the team. I thought he was terrific for it.
Yeah, at the time he ended up in their all-time leading scorer, and it's only to say it there. I hadn't realised he was 27, 28 when he went to Arsenal. Like, to go on and score that many goals at that stage of your career.
Yeah, and good goals, mate. Well, there's no such thing as a bad goal, but I mean, the way he did it. He scored a lot of goals on his own. You know, going past people and chipping them in, and you know, he was a top-class striker for Arsenal. There's no doubt about that. He was really, really good, and a good attitude too.
Yeah. So Ian Wright is in there. Who's alongside him?
I've got Thierry Henry.
Again, straightforward.
Oh yeah, I think he was one of the greats, to be honest. And funny enough, when he went to Arsenal, I don't know if you remember now, he played on the right wing a lot. I thought he was terrible. I did. I thought, what's he doing in the team? He's hopeless. And then he moved into centre forward and leading the attack, and he became what a goal scorer he was. He's a big lad, as we know, quick, great balance, great dribbler, great shot in his right foot, and finishing well. Oh, he was a real player.
Yeah, both a scorer of great goals and a scorer of lots of goals, like 6 straight seasons where he scored 24 and over in the Premier League.
Yeah, he was brilliant, Nathan. I think he became one of the great goal scorers in the Premier League. No doubt about that. He was terrific, and he could do them on his own as well. You know, I see some of his goals now, even on the telly, that they go back, and he's scored all sorts of goals. He's chipping them in, he's beating players, he's gone and he was very quick, big, strong lad, but very particularly quick and great on his right side particularly. No, he was some goal scorer.
So Henry and Wright. Who's the final member of your team?
I've gone for Dennis Bergkamp.
All right.
Bergkamp was easy-going looking fella, Nathan. Looked like he wasn't bothered at times. But he couldn't half finish and dribble and bring people into the game. You know, his control of the ball generally was really top class. Always had time and space for himself and scored his fair share of goals for Arsenal.
Yeah, and a tough nut as well, it always seemed. Like, could take the physical stuff.
Oh, he could take it. Yeah, he didn't dish it out very much, but the main thing is for players like that is to be able to take it and come back for more. And he could do that in his own way. I mean, there's some lads lose their head, they kick back and that. He didn't do that. He didn't seem to get excited about anything, to be quite honest. But it didn't stop him from playing. When anybody was giving him a hard time, which is what happens to the real players, they come back for more, Nathan. And he did it in his own way. They wouldn't kick him out of the game.
Yeah, it's not a bad front three. Wright, Henry, Bergkamp. Is there honourable mentions you want to run through quickly?
I have a few, Nathan. You know, there's maybe a lot. Alan Smith, certainly Frank McClintock, Martin Keown, Bob Wilson, I've mentioned, Lee Dixon, Kenny Sanson, Steve Bold, Ray Kennedy, Overmars, Van Persie, Radford, and that's about it, Nathan. You know, that's quite a fair. Maybe left out one or two. But they had some great players over the years, Arsenal, and I can tell you it wasn't easy to give you my team. Anyway, I'm sure there'll be plenty of others, Arsenal supporters or football supporters, say I don't know what the hell he's picking them for, and they have their own team, and that's football.
Well, that's the fun of it as well.
Yeah.
So the team: David Seaman in goals, back four: Peter Storey, David O'Leary, Tony Adams, Bob McNabb. In midfield: Cesc Fabregas, Patrick Vieira and Liam Brady. And the front three of Ian Wright, Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp. If you're doing this with Liam over the coming weeks, John, just leave him out and just see what the reaction is.
I daren't.
After what happened last time. John, great stuff as always. Thanks a lot for your time. We'll talk to you again next Thursday.
Nathan.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Paddy Power Half Hour, exclusive to OTB Sports Radio.
And I know the ball into him wasn't great, but he was getting the ball in his chest, and the touch was taking him 5 yards back into the centre of midfield where the pressure was. So it was doing the opposite of what we need as a number 10, and Jack Byrne offers that. But again, it is a big step up to international football.
A 30-minute no-nonsense preview of the weekend's Premier League action.
I think they'll do well in the Champions League. They'll get to the knockout stages, and if they get a kind of B-level team, not one of the really big guns, they could get to a quarter-final, and you never know.
The Paddy Power Half Hour, every Friday from 12 midday, only on OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
Yes, it's OTB AM on this sunny Friday morning. Hope it's sunny wherever it is that you are. You are watching OTB AM live on this Friday. Owen Sheehan, come on in. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. What's the crack?
All right, how are you getting on? How do you think of that Arsenal 11?
Yeah, strong team. Like with a lot of these teams that John is going to pick over the next little while, there are certain options that your hands are kind of tied with actually making an argument about them, because you wouldn't have seen many of them playing. Like when you look through the team, like you can't argue with John Giles when he makes a case for Liam Brady, for example. He's certainly the one historical figure that comes to mind where you're like, okay, fair enough. There's a player that I obviously didn't see play. But he obviously deserves to be there. Outside of that, you see someone like Bob McNabb make his team at left back, which obviously he justifies with the medals that he's won, double winning team in 1971. I'd always insert in my all-time Arsenal teams, I would always have Ashley Cole there, and I'm sure plenty of Arsenal fans wouldn't, because of the way he left the club.
He turned his back on the club on him.
But I think he's possibly Arsenal's greatest ever left back, and that would certainly be one omission I would make. But good to see that the likes of Henri, Bergkamp, Vieira haven't been left out for anybody from the good old days before football really started in 1992.
I feel John's pain, as you will yourself, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. I've been going through over the last few days the Westmeath round Mount Rushmore. Making a few calls to some people to make sure that I'm not leaving anybody out, and to get a bit of a steer on exactly that generation of, I don't want to do a Nathan Murphy on it, is what I'm saying, but I really don't want to end up in that level of shit show of leaving off somebody who really should be on there. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, I have to say. I'm waiting for Tommy to put me in. The biggest difficulty I'm going to have on will be finding somewhere to put her up. Like Westmeath, obviously famously a very flat county, 250 metres I think is the highest point we have, so that's going to be it's going to be troublesome for me.
Well, it's at least an easy spot to visit for people who will flock from all over the world to see the Mount Rushmore. They'd only have to climb a very short walk.
My biggest issue with that, even with that, is that it's almost in both Meath and Cavan as much as it is Westmeath simultaneously.
No one will know the difference.
Which is an issue. Yeah. Well, I mean, when we get Paddy up there, as you say, it's it'll have that international feel to it, and everybody will be very happy with life. We've loads coming up a little bit later on. One of the pieces that we want to just mention at the top, obviously, is the Classic Game Club this week. It's the famous flu game. Michael Jordan, was he actually suffering from flu? Was that a confirmed thing afterwards?
Well, if it wasn't flu, it was food poisoning, I suspect. Somebody very close to Jordan, I think it was his personal trainer, said that pizza came in the night before to their hotel in Salt Lake City. This is back in 1997, before crucial Game 5. He's the only one who eats the slice of pizza or has a bit of this that arrives at the door, and he is the only one who gets a bit sick afterwards. So that is the official word on it. Be interesting to see if it's covered in the new 10-part documentary series, which starts this Sunday on Michael Jordan, just to see if there's any clarity, because you're right, there's no actual definite line in all of this. It almost is in the murky waters, like the 1995 Rugby World Cup, for example, which obviously has a very famous sick story. The Tottenham Hotspur bottling their fourth place against West Ham on the final day of what was it, the 06 season. With all these stories, when it comes to illness, there's always a question mark around them. You're never quite sure. And particularly in this case, because it's one individual rather than an entire team. But I don't think Michael Jordan needed to pretend to be sick to get the edge over his opponents. And I'm not saying that he was like the cleanest guy psychologically or whatever. He could just go up to somebody's face and, I don't know, slag them off, trash talk them or whatever. And that would have been all he needed to do to get his psychological edge. He didn't need this. So there are theories out there that this was completely made up. He didn't need to make this up. He was an NBA champion at this time already. Like, there was no reason to believe that he was going to go out and think that they were going to lose this series, despite the fact that they were up against it at this point. But it's an unbelievable game. It's just ridiculous to watch. I've never seen a man perspire as much in my entire life as I've seen Michael Jordan during this game. It's fully up on YouTube. And the reason, as I say, that we picked it this week is because there's 5 weeks of hopefully good new Michael Jordan content coming from ESPN over the next month.
Yeah, you definitely. I'm only thinking about that this week. The opportunity to see new content is going to be very limited because it's difficult to make anything of that quality production, particularly. Obviously, so that's going to be a bit of an issue. One of the first things when you Google this that comes up says, "Was Michael Jordan hungover?" Like, we've all been there. Like, and you're blaming it on the dodgy pizza the night before. Everybody really knows it was that 7th point that really tipped you over the edge.
I would be astonished if Michael Jordan was hungover. There was a little bit of friction, which you get into in the piece, between Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman at the time, because Rodman was this big party boy, and like Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins was saying recently that he was actually with Dennis Rodman in Vegas for 2 nights in between Game 4 and Game 5 of that year. So Dennis Rodman was the person who's probably struggling with a bit of a hangover, if there was to be one person. And because he was just so good and such a great defensive player and so good under the boards, Jordan kind of gave him a free pass. So I think it'd be a little bit hypocritical if Jordan was actually going to be hungover going into that game. So personally, I would totally dispel that. But it does look like you were right if we were to get on a basketball court after even 1 or 2 pints the night before. That's exactly how he looks. Yeah, it's a great way to get rid of the toxins, is to go out and play a Game 5 of an NBA Finals.
We've all been there, had the pizza the night before. Right, so that's coming up a little bit later on. It'll be Eoin and Ronan in conversation with Kieran Donaghy. So lots of good stuff there on the boxing front. We also have a very special boxer challenge coming up a little later on. It's an extended OTB AM this morning. We're with you right through until 11 a.m. this morning, because Ray Moylette is going to take on a fascinating challenge that only one man has ever done before, Ray Moylette. Now, there wasn't too many people around to actually see if this was, in fact, a thing. There was certainly no independent observer from Stokes Kennedy Crowley there. So we are going to be that person just after 10 o'clock today, when we bear witness to the first time ever on record that one person has managed to do 1,000 push-ups in 1 hour. And it's all for a couple of great causes as well, in the shape of frontline workers that he's raising money for, as well as Pieta House too. So all those details are up on his social channels. They're up on our social channels as well, so go and check them out. He's also, like, we speak about the lack of brilliantly produced content, but Ray has also been very busy in the last 24 hours putting together this special. I mean, I think he's calling himself a 30 by 30. It's not far off. Take a look at his prep.
How's things? I'm can't fucking read that at all. I'm Ray Moylette doing the 1,000 challenge, the 1,000 challenge push-up 1,000 challenge for Pieta House and HSE frontline staff. Follow me and check out my home workout training camp.
Yes. Well, he's the finest specimen that have ever come out of these pads. Lord, look at him go. This will be pure grit.
You seen me catch grease lightning like Rocky the last day. We've upped the game here now, 1,000 push-ups. Or to catch down pigs. Just that fast bastard, simple as. I catch one out for the camera.
There's a mighty throw!
So just to tell you about the actual push-ups that we're doing, I know there's a lot of confusion and people don't know, and I don't want any controversy on the day. Seems to be hard enough. Now lasagna I had for breakfast or eat now. Of course, I don't want any controversy on the day, and these are going to be the push-ups. They're boxers push-ups. Take the pressure off the back. And turf bag, or a manure bag, whatever you want. Oh. Now pile of dung, I was farking all week to make the pile for myself. I want you to keep your knees on the ground, take the pressure off the back. A bit of dung out in front and you won't touch the ground. So hands up from there and you're going to push. 1, 2.
Yeah, the things you do for your art. Ray Moylette, I believe, is on the line. Good morning to you, Ray.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
You have a bit of timber to shed there, a bit of weight on you.
I do. I'm definitely not trimmed down for this challenge. All right, but I ate plenty all week, so I should be ready to go.
Ray, we were getting really excited there about the 10-part Michael Jordan documentary. I think the world has been getting excited about the completely wrong thing. That was a work of art.
Well, there was no actors involved. That was real life. So we just wanted to show behind the scenes. You know, sometimes some of us get caught up with Instagram and Twitter, and we like to show the glamour side of what we do. But sometimes we have to go back to grassroots, literally.
Where does the wheelbarrow drill rank in terms of the great drills for athletes?
Yeah, it's probably up there with, it'd be second to the assault bike.
Right, very good. And well, what sort of muscles are you activating with the wheelbarrow?
Probably the back anyway. The back and the core, and maybe a bit of your biceps for the gun show. But that's about
it. Who is your co-star, Ray?
That's my brother Ricardo. He originally wasn't meant to be in the film, but he demanded he get his role. So that's how it ended up where he was on it. I think he added a lot to it, so it was great.
That's how some of the great movies get cast. You know, like not exactly the plan when you started out, but absolutely brilliant stuff. Come here, how are you feeling? We're what are we, under 2 hours out now from kickoff here. You have 1,000 push-ups to do over the course of an hour for a couple of great causes. Are you feeling nervous?
Being honest with you, I am a little bit nervous. I had disturbed sleep last night. Just unusual feeling. Like, it's hard to know what to expect, even though I sort of know what to expect because I've done it before. But I'm a little bit nervous. There's there is a little bit of pressure on this now. You know, people have donated a lot of money, and I have to prove that it's worth it for them, and hopefully for everyone that maybe is going to donate as well, that I can do it. And this wasn't just a publicity stunt on April 1st.
Yeah, there is a bit of jeopardy here. In terms of, I know you were on with Nathan last night. I mean, I don't want to say you were cocky, Ray, right? But I was definitely getting the impression this lad really feels as if he has this in the bag. How confident are you?
I am very confident, being honest, but I will have to go through hell to get there.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I'm sure there's hundreds of people listening to your show that can do this challenge, but it's a mental challenge that if they do it, they have to go through that barrier of just the mental block that it comes at halfway when you've nothing left in the tank, and it just gets so repetitive. The clock is ticking, and you know you're only halfway there. But now I'm going to have a lot of people watching me and a lot of people counting every rep to maybe prove me wrong, but that's okay too.
Ray, can I just ask, what is going through your mind when you're at that moment of hell, having done it already before and not having the motivation of, say, charity last time you did it, or nobody watching? What's going through your head? What is the thing that is driving you?
It's hard to know, really. I don't know what's going through my head. You're just trying to get as much breather as you can. So the first 10 minutes, they're relatively easy. They're the easiest. After that, it gets harder, and you're just trying to get your breath, and you're wondering, I'm sure it's going to come into my head, what the hell am I doing here at all? And why did I sign up for this? That's going to come into my head more than once, I guarantee that. But I know I can do it. I have the capacity to get over that challenge. And look at it, this is for a great cause. And if I can't do it for this, you know, there's no chance of me ever doing it again. So this is the perfect motivation that I need, the perfect support platform from yourselves, and the perfect charities to raise it for.
Yeah, listen, we're delighted to be involved with it. I can assure you that, given the causes that are on the line, and like in terms of what you're going to go through your head as you're doing this. First of all, you've mapped out at 17 a minute. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. So once I complete the 17 in a minute, now then the equation of them might change. Or so for the first 10, I'm going to do 17 on the trot. After that, I'm going to do 10 and 7 in the minute, and then from 31 minutes on, I'll go 6, 6, and 5. So it doesn't really matter of the breakdown. Once you can complete the 17 push-ups in the minute space, you're going to be on track. If I was to fall behind at any stage, there's no chance you're going to catch up again. So it's important to be able to hit the nail on the head, get the 17, try and maximize your breaks, and then get ready for the next minute again.
And your breaks are essentially, you're going to have to hold a position. Like, there is no opportunity to go to the jacks here.
No, absolutely not. No. I literally be from kneeling position into push-up position. I won't even get a chance to open the window. All these things will be pre-done. Everything is set. I'll have the water beside me. Literally, there's no room for error. As I said last night on the show, I had about 30 seconds to spare over the hour duration. You know, it's not a lot of room for error at all. So I'm very cautious of that and aware that there can't be any slip-ups here. You know, realistically, my career is on the line. This is my career. This is my defining moment.
And before we wrap up and let you off to do your final bits of prep, so the water is you will have some water access. That's what you're saying. You'll be able to take a drink.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I need water there, literally on hand, just to be able to take drinks. Oh no, it's like I never thought push-ups as cardio before. They're like I was. When you start adding up the numbers, it becomes cardio and the strength. It becomes a bit of everything. It just becomes a challenge, and that's why I thought that it's worthy of trying to raise the funds because of how hard it is. And for like realistically, looking at 1,000 push-ups an hour, it seems okay and it seems handy enough. And when you say 17 a minute, that actually seems all right too. But it's actually when you multiply that by 59, that's the killer. The actual process of it is very simple to break down, but when you multiply it by the number 59, that's what makes it all the more difficult. But actually, a very good friend, Jerry Hussey, came up with an idea. He asked people to do as many as they can. You know, they can join me while they're watching this stream. You know, if they want to do 8 an hour, if they want to do 10 or 12, just to try and work with me on it. But also it'll be their home workout and it'll be a challenge for themselves and maybe to see how hard these things are. But it'd be great if people could join in around Ireland or around the world, I guess, and just do their push-ups. And at the end of the day, they'll have exercise done. They'll have a bit of crack watching me under pressure, and we hopefully will have all raised a few pounds for the great charities.
Yeah, that's definitely the most important angle here. You're nearly about halfway there at 5k, almost, Ray, of the 10 grand you want to get at him for a couple of really worthy causes as well.
Yeah, like I was amazed how I've got up to that level. I haven't actually checked it this morning yet. I don't want to get caught up too much of worrying about the raising the money and all that. I have lots of good people helping me and sharing it online and supporting me, and some unbelievable people and unbelievable donations. And anyone that has donated, I'm extremely grateful for it, because I've done this challenge before. I've done millions of push-ups in my whole life, I'd say, but none of them were as important as these ones now. You know, it's not about the push-ups, it's not about the challenge, it's about everyone coming together and raising the money. That's what's the most important thing. So from what I'm actually doing on the floor is only a drop in the ocean. What these guys are doing, donating whatever they can, that's what's making all the difference. That's the real special part of it.
Yeah, and I said a bit earlier on that the links to that GoFundMe page all up on our social channels as well as your own as well. We'll look at. I'm sure you have to go and get the lasagna out of the way, Ray, and make sure it's not repeating on you when you're in the middle of this thing. We're going to catch up with you again, I think, briefly just before we get underway. It's a 10 o'clock start. It's a specially extended OTB AM. We're wishing you the absolute best of luck. We're right behind you, and we'll talk to you in just under 2 hours.
I appreciate that, guys, and best of luck. See you soon.
Good stuff. Ray Moylette live on the line there from Mayo, and I don't know about you, Owen, but I'm sort of figuring I could probably knock out around 10 of these things in a row, and that'd be probably about the height of it for me.
Like, absolutely. With him all the way until push-up number 10, and then it's like, right, time to get in the chair and actually watch him.
With you all the way for that first minute. Right, it's 10 a.m. this morning, live and off the ball, 1,000 press-ups. It's with the aim of raising 10k for Pieta House and for frontline staff at the HSE as well. So check out offtheball.com social channels. You get all the links to the GoFundMe page up there, and Ray's own social channels as well. We're really delighted to be right behind that cause, and we're streaming it live at 10 this morning, right across Off the Ball. If you can donate whatever amount, please go along there now and up the ante as much as you possibly can, whatever the amount. And Ray will be grateful, as will the cause as well, in the aim to raise 10k for those great worthy causes. Right, here's a little bit of a flavour of what's happening in the world of sport today. A very special GA Congress is going to be held remotely this afternoon, which could go some way to deciding how hurling and football are going to proceed once restrictions on movement are lifted, on the assumption that they are at some point over the coming months during the coronavirus pandemic. The association saying earlier in the week that no championships will be played before July at the very earliest. So two motions on the table today. The first to discuss discuss whether or not to hand over authority to the GAA's management committee. That would be for a 12-week period of time, during which they would just get ultimate say as to whether the championships would go ahead and in what shape. And should that be passed, then the second would allow that management committee to make those decisions. And the GPA has also understood they have held their own meetings, are being held very close to this conversation as well, in terms of keeping the players in tune with what's happening. Premier League clubs will discuss potentially ending the current season on June the 30th. That's a meeting set for today. It's reported that there's a split between the Big Six grouping of clubs that want the season to be finished at all costs, and other clubs that want a deadline enforced, after which that would be the calling of the season, effectively, as has happened in Scotland. UEFA working on plans which see the Champions League final held in Istanbul at the end of August, so we'll see what that happens there. And that's pretty much it for the world of live sport, as much as it is for you on this Friday morning. Here is a flavour of what's coming up over the course of the morning on OTB AM. A packed show for you, as mentioned, between now and, in fact, 11 o'clock this morning. We'll get stuck into the sports pages in just a moment's time. I'll let you know everything that's happening there. There's plenty coming up, mainly in relation to GA and as well to the Premier League and the wider world of football. So that's coming away just in a few minutes' time. After that, we're into the crappy quiz. It's Eoin in the quizmaster seat, as always, with Tommy and Ger and myself going head-to-head. I've got 3 in a row, so can I make it 4? In an unprecedented move. This lockdown has been really good for me in crappy quizzes, it has to be said. Sarah Rowe is going to join us just after 9 o'clock. We'll be asking Sarah how's the head in our brand new series that delves into the mental side of how athletes and people in general are managing to cope with lockdown. Our classic game club this week will focus on, we mentioned a little bit earlier on, that Michael Jordan flu game from 1997, Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and somehow Michael Jordan plays through the pain barrier of flu, or was it dodgy pizza? We're not 100% sure, to absolutely blitz it and get it done. That's Michael Jordan. That's coming away. It's Owen, Kieran Donaghy and Ronan Mullen in conversation there. That's just after 9 o'clock this morning. We'll have our player ratings, Better Call Saul player ratings, and plenty of interaction from some of the stars, by the way, of Better Call Saul. That's coming away just before 10 o'clock. And then obviously after 10, we're into that live push-up challenge from Ray Moylette's front room. That's coming away at 10 a.m. this morning. But right now, it is time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
And we're going to start you with offtheball.com this morning. There is lots of good stuff up there. That John Giles, Arsenal 11, and plenty more besides. But one of the stories to mention is Lee Westwood, who's been in conversation with Joe, Nathan, Fionn on Golf Weekly this week. It's a really good piece. Very philosophical is Lee Westwood about the major misses that he's had over the years, the fact that he's never quite managed to get that done, the Ryder Cup captaincy potentially in a couple of years' time as well. It doesn't seem like the lack of success when it comes to majors necessarily keeps him up at nights, but a really strong, in-depth interview with Lee Westwood there, so you can check that out. It's up on offtheball.com.
The Irish Independent this morning leads with Donaghy Boyle's piece about the GPA. Championship-free summer, a real possibility, is what they're warning. Of course, this is going to become much clearer over the next 24 hours. Today's special Congress, it'll give the GAA's management committee special new powers surrounding the structure of competitions. They're likely to get a 12-week period to do whatever they like to ensure that they can get the most out of whatever remains of 2020, and that could be extended if they need more time as well. But the GPA sounding a note of caution, saying that there is possibility that there won't be any championship this summer. Meanwhile, UEFA target August 29th for Champions League final. So this would be obviously at the end of August. If they're looking to get this competition played this year, it obviously is a little bit in conflict with what the Premier League are saying, that they want to get their domestic year finished by the end of June. So I guess it's two different things. You could easily play a Champions League final as next season is about to start almost, but it seems that it's still very much up in the air what will happen. But August 29th is the current target for UEFA. And then you've also got modern pentathlete side Brazil setting up a training base at her parents' home in Galway. So that's the back page photographs there on the Irish Independent.
Yeah, and the Irish Examiner, meanwhile, it's also that the main splash photograph in the back is another athlete who's getting to grips with the lockdown and having to cope with how they might train in their individual sports. Particularly difficult if you're a swimmer, as is the case here for Brendan Hyland, as you can see out his backyard there, with some bands, as we'd have seen from Bethany Carson, who did one of our Off the Couch series this week. It can be done on dry land, it turns out. But that's Brendan Hyland's attempts there from his backyard. Men's story from John Fogarty. Players to be asked if they favour behind closed door games is the piece here. There's, as we've been telling you, a GA Special Congress this afternoon. The GPA have been canvassed for their opinion. They met online on Wednesday night. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any issue with keeping the GPA and players in general abreast of developments, obviously. But players, I mean, are not going to decide on whether games happen or not. Of course, they need to be agreeable, and I can't see a reason why they wouldn't be. And there's a big deal made across a lot of the papers today as to the players' opinion on this. I mean, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. They obviously have to agree to play the games, but their opinion on whether they're played behind closed doors or not is not really a decision for the players.
No, it's not. It's not entirely their decision anyway, that's for sure. I think you're right that there has to be some sort of conversation, and we might get into this in a little bit more depth in a while, but like the players won't want to potentially they won't want to win an All-Ireland in this fashion. Like it's hard to know. I would also say though that if players had the opportunity to train and play games before the end of the year, there are huge benefits as well. I'm sure that plenty of them are tearing their hair out at the moment, and if they have this, that it might actually balance out the idea of winning an All-Ireland with no fans there to watch you, or going close to an All-Ireland at least. I'm going to move on to the Irish Times.
Just before you move on, just a couple of other pieces to touch on there in the Examiner before we move on. Owen Cormacan writing about the Women's Championship not going ahead in May and June as planned, and that the new format might be delayed until 2021, is what he's saying there. Lovely piece with Margaret McConville as well across the top about cocooning. This is Crossmid Lane, as people who will have seen last year that Thomas Niblock documentary on the club will know very well. She's 84 this week. And she said that she did a video for the club for the internet, she said, and she sang a bit of a tune. I got awful stick over that from my own family. Some of them were ringing me, pretending to be Louis Walsh and Simon Cowell. So it certainly seems like Oisin McConville's mum is the life and soul of the party still, even under those trying circumstances. And one last piece there, Simon Lewis across the bottom on the IRFU welcoming World Rugby's €92 million relief fund. He says, while not revealing whether it would avail of the financial support offered in the form of a combination of advances and loans, the IRFU issued a short statement to the Irish Examiner yesterday, which read, the IRFU welcomed the announcement by World Rugby as we continue to monitor the financial impact of COVID-19 on our finances. And he says that it emerged last night, says Simon Lewis, that the IRFU Performance Director David Nucifora will hold a conference call meeting with the provinces to discuss a potential return to training on May the 18th.
The Irish Times this morning leads with Sean Moran's piece about today's GEA meeting. They're going to meet amid dire financial threat of losing championship. The stakes are to the sum of €60 million. So if you talk about the idea of players not wanting to play behind closed doors, well, the cost of that will be somewhere in the region of 60 million. So huge stakes for the GEA. They will want to get some semblance of a championship played at some point this year if it is safe. Meanwhile, clubs at loggerheads over June plan to end the season. This is with regards to a proposal from certain clubs in the Premier League. They are also meeting today. It's actually going to be a fairly important afternoon, you'd suspect, in terms of how we view sport in this country. Will we have Premier League soon? Will we have Championship soon? Some of those questions will become clearer today, although I would be very surprised if we had any definite answers, because you can't possibly give a definite answer unless, of course, you have the confidence of the PGA Tour. Their headline there, PGA Tour are very confident of June return behind closed doors. Tremendously confident is probably what I read it as. They say they're not 110% confident that it will go ahead, but they have earmarked the start of June as a potential return to play. In their defence, it is the one sport where social distancing could be observed pretty well behind closed doors. And as a as a playing spectacle, it's not the most alien change to be playing in front of no crowds. Like the kind of the peaks and troughs of a stadium atmosphere is vastly different to the peaks and troughs of walking down the fairway. Granted, on majors and in fairness, all the big PGA events, there is huge crowds, but I don't imagine it would have as significant a difference on the player as it would in, say, football or any of the team sports, for example. So I think golf is certainly one which might be able to get back first. June 11th, I think it is, that they're mentioning. That might be beyond the bounds of reasonable ambition, though. And Malachy Clerkin here, great piece. Missing five-a-side brings about some harsh truths, and that quote that's in bold in the middle: "The lockdown has turned me into a monster, humiliating a 5-year-old girl with a drag-back pirouette. The fact that she's not at all disappointed and in fact laughs her way through it is scant consolation, really." So he's finding his football playing buzz in his back garden.
Yeah, I think a good point in relation to the discussions that are happening in sport, and I wonder if, as we move on to the Irish Daily Mail, I suspect a lot of the conversations amongst sports bodies at the minute should really be in relation to the spirit of playing their sport behind closed doors. It's about getting agreement on that and whatever hurdles need to be crossed to do that. And then once things start to be lifted a bit, at that point they're ready to go, because it seems like inevitable that's the question to be asked. So we'll see how it all plays out. As you say, golf probably seems like a very likely one. The Irish Daily Mail, Michael Clifford saying that players will have final say on those GEA plans. Clubs v Stars over pay cuts. City and Chelsea can't agree deals with players, and Pep exasperated by split in City dressing room. Mike Keegan writes there about the impasse, focusing on the impasse at two of the Premier League's top clubs in terms of that player pay conversation. And in the UK, a story about Tottenham asking Maurizio Pochettino to take a pay cut. Now, there'll be a lot of people who are going, yeah, it seems reasonable, and then remembering that Maurizio Pochettino is, of course, no longer the manager of Tottenham. But it seems somehow he's managed to stay on the payroll, and they've had to contact him and say, hey, Maurizio, you wouldn't mind taking a little bit of a shave on the pay here while we work our way through this. It's a bizarre situation. I'm assuming that that's just a placeholder as they work to some sort of severance package with the former manager. And Matt Hughes with an exclusive that some Premier League sides could miss out on £100 million over the lack of European football. That's the Irish Daily Mail.
The London Independent today, CrossFit's relentless rise is the main photograph. Coronavirus has not halted the fitness regimen's popularity. Goff left depressed after breakthrough year. It's a kind of depressing story here from Luke Brown. American teenager Coco Gauff says she really struggled to deal with the hype and mental pressure brought on by her rapid rise last year, and she did become depressed at one point after, of course, an unbelievable ascent last year, where I think everybody kind of knew her name after Wimbledon, beating Venus Williams, becoming the first 15-year-olds in 15 years to enter the top 50 in the WTA rankings. Left her feeling really depressed. Throughout my life, she says, I was always the youngest to do things. It added this pressure that I needed to do well fast. And right before Wimbledon in around 2017, 2018, she was struggling to figure it out. And that was really what she wanted. But for a year, I was really depressed. And that was the toughest year for her, she says. And Newcastle takeover complete by 1st of May, writes Miguel Delaney. The £300 million takeover of Newcastle United expected to be fully completed by the end of this month.
Yeah, kind of surprised there's not more on that story across a lot of the pages today. It is taken up in the Mirror, though. The Irish Daily Mirror this morning. Time is right for a time revolution, says Jermaine Genus. Simon Bird's story there. The sky's the limit for revamped tune as oil billions spark dreams of Champions League. Not an awful lot necessarily in that paper or many others about the flip side of that investment and where it's coming from. Pat Nolan in the Irish edition talks about new Congress, new structure, new hope, and that today's special Congress will give the GA Management Committee, they get 12 weeks now of freedom to draw proposals, and it will be empowered during that time to make the call without necessarily having to revert to Congress.
The Irish Sun this morning leads with a couple of football stories here. You've got United Front as the main headline. SOS 1 is Rednev is player and EFL peacemaker. So this is Gary Neville acting as a peacemaker in the wage row between the EFL clubs and players. And SOS 2 is Big Six join as one to fight June 30th cut-off. So at the meeting today, you're expecting the Big Six clubs in the Premier League to say, no, we're not having this June 30 cut-off. We are going to give ourselves enough room to actually get the season played by the end of the summer, which shows just how valuable this television money is to even those clubs. Letters pray for frontline staff. Old Trafford last night with a tribute to NHS workers. They illuminated the letters NHS in the word Manchester. So therefore, if you rocked up to Old Trafford last night, you would have seen NHS United. And Gary Breen performances at tournaments influenced my best Ireland 11. That is the Irish Sun this morning.
The Guardian, Ewan Murray, as you said a bit earlier on their own reporting that story, PGA Tour, very confident that golf will be able to return in June. More insight as well on the Premier League battles over how to finish the season, if at all. Sid Lowe interview with Inside with Andres Iniesta who's playing his football in Asia, and some interesting stuff from him there as well. He has some idea that the break that he's having to be enforced on, obviously, at the minute with his football, he reckons that time off will just be time added on at the end. It actually struck me that Paul O'Connell used to say something very similar about his own career when he hit injuries, that this will just be time that I might have retired at 34 and now I'll be able to retire at 35. And obviously it didn't end up amazingly for him, but he had, I know, towards the end of his career, reconciled himself with the fact that he was just, that wasn't actually true, that was never going to be time added on, that it's time stripped from your career, essentially. So we'll see how it works for Andres Iniesta. And a piece inside as well from Barney Ronan on that Newcastle takeover. It's quite a brilliant piece, in fact, and it's well worth a read about that change of ownership. Ashley gone, Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund in, and he writes about how the response seems to have been largely positive. But one brilliant paragraph here that I'll read you very briefly to give you a bit of a sense of it. He said, perhaps it is time here for a tale of the tape. Mike Ashley, a pig-headed retail magnate, Saudi Arabia, blood-stained inherited dictatorship. He says in this tale of the tape, Mike Ashley, 0 hours contracts in his sports shops. Saudi Arabia beheaded 37 men in a single day. And then finally, Mike Ashley showed disrespect to Rafa Benitez. Saudi Arabia murdered and dismembered Jamal Khashoggi. So that'll give you a bit of a sense as to how measured or otherwise one's response should be to the new Newcastle owners.
Yeah, it's an excellent piece. That's Bernie Ronay, isn't it?
Yes.
In the Guardian this morning. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is breaking point. Real fears Premier League won't reach finish line, and there's a picture there of Brighton chairman Tony Bloom. He's admitted the Premier League could struggle to complete the season. Like, another interesting thing he's been saying, Adrian, is about the possibility of a salary cap in the Premier League. Like, you wondered with the rising wage bills and the extortion of transfer fees over the last couple of years if we were actually witnessing something akin to a football bubble. A lot of people would have completely dismissed that idea because of the fact that there is still way too many people interested in football, and it is something that is probably a little bit eternal. But some of these fees were getting completely outrageous, to the point where you thought that maybe even the biggest clubs would have just refused to pay transfer fees, and that might have actually driven prices down over the coming years. This obviously has ensured that things are going to nosedive, and perhaps kind of proves that what was actually paddling away under the water was something a lot more fragile than we all probably realised. And I think even when you look at some of even the bottom half of the Premier League, it's a fairly stark warning of what's going to happen to football over the next little while. So Tony Bloom's been across all the papers. Come back to what you know is the headline regarding the Bundesliga and German football. One of the stadiums, Borussia Mönchengladbach, I think it is, looking to pack out a stadium with cardboard cutouts of their fans. New special powers for GEA Chiefs is the headline on today's GEA special Zoom Congress. I presume it's Zoom that they're going to use. And busy autumn for Ireland, writes Derek Foley. Ireland looks set for at least 5 rugby internationals across 2 hemispheres in the space of 6 weeks in October and November.
And the last piece from me is the Irish News, which has a great photograph of that piece you mentioned earlier on. And very thoughtful stuff from Manchester United, turning out the lights to spell NHS United across the front of Old Trafford. Andy Waters on those emergency powers for the GA management committee there. And Brendan Crossan speaks to the Cliftonville manager, Paddy McLaughlin, who seems to be warming to some degree to the idea that behind closed doors might be the only way to finish the season. So that's where we're at. I think with the newspapers, is that it on?
Well, I just want to do one more, just Iron News and iSport here, leading with that photograph of NHS United, but also an exclusive about CVC's deal with the Six Nations and Pro 14 still very much up in the air. And there's 2 ways of looking at this. On the one hand, you could say, well, everything is kind of screwed at the moment financially, making new investments, making going out of your way to spend a lot of money right now is not advisable and is probably unlikely. So therefore, this thing could be on ice. At the second time, this could be the perfect time for upheaval. You listen to Bernard Laporte trying to float his idea of a Club World Cup there within the last fortnight. New ideas are forming, and it is the perfect time for change. And perhaps CVC will actually see this time as the perfect time to invest, even though it is risky on a financial sense. So hard to know, but iNews had that exclusive that the deal is up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, there's so much that's up in the air, really, isn't there? Like in terms of everything we talk about the Premier League and that player cap, and it is an interesting angle, one that you wouldn't really have thought about before, because the trends obviously over the last decades have been very much the opposite. That the sky's the limit in terms of clubs' capacity to spend, and we see that in Newcastle now as well. That's absolute. dreams of Champions League. It's not dreams of Champions League. If the Saudis are coming to get involved, that's exactly what they have in mind, and they have the backing to do it. And like maybe there would be some will to get that done in the current environment, that people actually look at the vast swathes of cash, like disgusting amounts of money, to be frank about it, that have been spent in the sporting industry in general, but certainly in football. And like maybe there's some sort of a swathe of opinion that, you know, clubs look within themselves and decide this is really inappropriate given all the things that are happening. But like that's only going to be a short-term thing, because we all forget about it in 6 months or a year, and then whatever new legislations that may be able to be rushed in at the minute, I think people just forget about them in 6 months or a year, and it's like, oh yeah, like 200 million to buy Neymar, like, yeah, why not? I can't see anything that might be brought in at the minute lasting.
No, and I think if you are somebody who represents the Professional Footballers Association, for example, the one thing you want to be doing right now is not putting pen to paper on something that is lasting, like trying to ensure that everything is temporary. Like if you're speaking to your players, like, and they actually are being asked to take pay cuts, I really think it's very, very hard to say no at the moment. And it's not some sort of Matt Hancock notion that, you know, they should be contributing more to society or whatever. That was obviously ridiculous. But I mean, these are clubs that are going to struggle hugely over the next few months and throughout the next year, you'd imagine. And these are Premier League clubs. And there really should be some sort of onus on the players to take their pay cuts to keep some of these clubs in a decent position, to then get their money back at some point. And if that's a temporary thing, then great, and the clubs will get their money back for a little while, or will at least have a better look on the balance sheet. But it won't be a thorn in the side of the players for down the line. It won't be something that they'll have contractually signed to actually say, well, you know, there's going to be a salary cap or whatever. So that's probably the way that the players will look at it. But there's still, even at the moment, going to be clubs that loggerheads with the players about whether or not they can actually dock wages, or whether or not players will actually take wage deductions. And it's going to be very, very tricky, because like it is, today is key. Today is absolutely key. If you can get the remaining games played this summer, then that is a huge, huge weight off the shoulders, because that television money then comes in, and that is a huge, like a very, very big amount of the salary to go to the players. So if that goes down the drain, then there's a lot of trouble immediately now for clubs. And then maybe the players will actually say, well, fair enough, okay, the season's definitely off, we can take a pay cut.
I wonder if a salary cap being brought in football, like depending on the level of it, but it might actually end up impacting on very few players. I don't mean at clubs, I mean across the globe, that, you know, they bring in a set pay cap. There will be one or two players depending on your club, but at some of the top clubs there'll be one or two players who might be impacted. They might have to slightly reduce their income, and that's it. But like, it probably wouldn't actually impact on 97-98% of players. Would, you know, it just wouldn't have any great impact on them. I suppose the only thing is that, like, does that only serve to end up putting money back in the club's pockets? And what does that ultimately achieve, I suppose, is a question to be asked.
But I think it does change. I think it would have a significant impact. Like, I mean, okay, so you're talking about, you are still talking about the top tier players, I guess. Like, but would there not be a sort of staggered salary cap, that obviously the Championship will have very different fields with salary cap than the Premier League, and maybe the top 5 leagues have a different salary cap to allow them to sign better players? I don't know, like there could be one global salary cap, or it could be a league by league thing, which could be a very dangerous territory. But like, for example, if the salary cap is whatever, 20-30 million, like, is that a reasonable salary cap per year for a first team squad? Like that would impact a lot of players, you'd imagine, especially those earning like 250 grand a week. They would be taking pay cuts. Those at a lower end wouldn't be able to get their jump. It's like, as far as modern football goes, this is an unbelievably revolutionary idea to consider a salary cap. Like, as I say there, I couldn't even think for the time being what the figure would be, and how, whether or not it's a global thing or whether or not it's just for a few leagues. But yeah, worrying times if you happen to be earning 250k a week, basically.
Yeah, it very much depends on the level of it and the extent of it, I think, and the dynamic of it, before we'd get into any great sort of ideas about the impact of it. The other thing, just very briefly to touch on again, is the GEA story today. Special Congress going to meet. They're going to give the GEA Management Committee 12 weeks, effectively, within which they can work away on new proposals, depending on a HSE and government advice about where society should be at. You guys obviously spoke with Luke O'Neill during the week and the importance of a return to sport in some shape, even if it is behind closed doors, both on a personal level for people and obviously on that collective sort of organised sport, be it amateur or professional level as well. So it'll be fascinating to see. And it does seem one of the big things that's been made of across the newspapers today is the consultation with the GPA, who it seems met online on Wednesday night, and are having some sort of a watching brief. I know one of the newspapers reported this morning that they'd seen some of the outcome of some of these meetings, and it's very much a watching brief. Wait and see what the GAA recommend. But I can't see anything other. If I'm an intercounty player, the GAA are coming back to say, "Grand, we can go ahead. We have agreed to the spirit of playing these games behind closed doors. The time frame of that will be dictated by the government advice. Are you okay with that?" I can't see why there's any great furore about consulting the GPA, that anybody will be coming back to say, like, was it LeBron, one of the NBA players, have been saying, nah, it was LeBron. I'm not going to, very early on this thing, nah, I mean, it's all about the fans. I ain't playing any games unless they're fans in, which is a ludicrous sort of renegade attitude to act so unilaterally. It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't see any GA players coming back to say, we're not going to play unless the fans get in.
Yeah, you're probably right on that, and going that far and saying we're not going to play and putting a foot down. But I would imagine that there will be feedback from the players saying this is not what we want to do, or in an ideal world, this is really not what we want to do, and we are not in an ideal world, and we're the furthest thing possible from that.
And it's not like, I suppose the difference between this and any other conversations that the GPA would have been central to, or players would have been central to at any point over the last number of years, like, it's not their call. That's the reality. It doesn't matter what they would want to do. It's either go ahead and play behind closed doors or don't play at all.
Mm-hmm. And
and surely if that's the question, like, there's only one answer.
Like 100%, and this is not just a situation where the people of Ireland will be encouraged to see sport on television, and it will help everybody. Everybody will be happy to have this sort of some semblance of normality back in their lives. But it's also important for the players as well. Like as I said a few moments ago, like these players, I'd imagine, are kicking up not having football and hurling this year, and they would be delighted to have the opportunity to even get back to some sort of training that would be possible within the guidelines. For example, the payoff, though, for them, unfortunately, is having to play in front of an empty stadium, and that very, very weird sensation. But at least you get some sort of play. Nothing is going to be ideal. That's the only thing that we do know for now. Nothing is going to be right or feel right for everybody, but there is a possibility of doing something that feels a little bit wrong, but is better than nothing at some point this year.
Yeah, I would lap it up. Any live sport, behind closed doors or not, bring it on. Just gone a quarter to 9 on this sunny Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. Do get in contact with us, depending where it is you're listening or watching us this morning. We'd love to hear from you, so do keep the comms coming into us. We're going to have the Ray Moylette press-up challenge coming your way just after 10 o'clock this morning. My old boxer is doing 1,000 press-ups in 1 hour from 10 a.m. It's all to raise 10 grand for HSE frontline staff and for PA House as well. We're going to be streaming it live across Off the Ball. We'd love you to join in and cheer Ray on if you can. Donate to a great cause as well. All the details up on our social channels. He's got a GoFundMe page going. He's about halfway there in his bid to get to 10k. So go up there and support him if you can. And the quiz is coming up next. But over the coming days and weeks, we'll be talking to sports people across the country and asking them how's the head. We're going to check in on how they're coping during the crisis and what they're doing to keep their mental health in order, and to find out what advice they've found useful for some of their sporting careers that served them well during this very stressful time. So we'd love to hear how you're getting on. What is it that's keeping you sane? How you got yourself through the last number of weeks. We really do want to hear from you as well. So do get in contact with us on that. Let us know how's the head. You can WhatsApp Off the Ball 087 9180 180, or just use that hashtag how's the head. Do let us know how it is you're getting on. But this morning we're checking in with the AFL and Mayo football star Sarah Rowe.
Sport is keeping me sane and being able to train. I know it's not to the same level that you'd want to train at, but being able to do, your own bit of gym and use equipment that you have at home and being able to go for a run is probably keeping me ticking over. And yeah, so I'm just literally just staying in the house, going around the 2 kilometre radius. That's really all I'm doing. I probably didn't realise how bad it was until I got home, until flights started getting cancelled and all that. Before that, it wasn't really ramping up in Australia. So you have to see things in order to actually understand what's actually going on. So it took for me to actually get home and see what was going on. And when my parents told me I'd have to go into a different house, which is 200 meters down the road from me, I'm in my auntie and uncle's house at the moment. So when they told me to go to that house, I was like, are you having a laugh at the start? But then I realised the seriousness of the situation, and I suppose I seen it all on the news and all that, and I was like, yeah, actually I do have to do this, and it's important that we all stick to what we're being told here and we all buy into the process here. So yeah, it's been strange not being able to see family, but there's so many people in the same situation that it's kind of like, you know, it is what it is. This will pass and it will all blow over in time, and we'll look back on it in a few years to come with, I suppose, some fond memories. But it's obviously a sad and hard time for so many families, and luckily everyone's safe at the moment in my family. You really miss that interaction with the players, and coming home from Australia I was looking forward to meeting up with all my teammates and, you know, just figuring out how they've been getting on the last few months. Obviously you can have phone calls and all that, but it's just not the same as, you know, human interaction. So with training, I am within the 2 kilometre radius from the Bleak track down the road in Ballina, so that's been a great help. So I've been down the track, you know, maybe 4 days a week, and then there's a gym in Ballina who's going to give some equipment to us. So the gym, it's up in Ardnary, and he's given some equipment to us, and Sean has got some equipment as well from MC Sport. So we have enough to kind of keep us going for the time being. And Connor Finn, who's the S&C for the male men's and women's, has been really good, and he's been sending me a program that I can do that can help me just, I suppose, maintain muscle. That's all you want to do at the moment, just being able to maintain what you have and, you know, push forward a small bit in the running, because you can do a bit more running. You can kind of, you know, there is, while you don't have all the facilities and all this access to the things you want, there is also opportunity there to work on the finer details of your game, and Connor's been really good with helping with that, and we've been keeping in touch with the male ladies, and we're all sticking to a program at the moment and just trying to do as best we can in the situation that we're in. I've been doing the burpee challenge with Sean, so that's 1 minute burpee the first day, then 2, 3, 4, up as far as 14. So we're on day 9 today, which is, it's been tough. I'm also doing a press up challenge for the Laura Lynn Foundation. So it's 3,000 press ups in the month of April to raise funds for Laura Lynn. Obviously at times like this, you know, everyone's struggling, but charities like that are really struggling, and, you know, I suppose we all figure out as well over the last few weeks what, like, the things that are really important to us as well. So things like that are really important to support at the moment, because they're getting knocked hard, as well as, you know, business people and sports people too. So 3,000 press ups for the month of April. If anyone wants to join or donate, either on my Instagram page you'll find a link. And so I've been doing that, been running, been gymming as much as I can with the equipment I have, and been going for strolls in the evening, cooking really nice food and healthy food, and that's the height of it really, and listening to podcasts.
Chris Martin.
Oh, you're kidding me! September.
Kyle Lafferty.
Are you joking me?
Is that right?
All right, welcome along to the shoutiest segment on Irish radio. It's a scintillating, it's a stupefying, it's a splendido, crappy quiz. Every Friday, we pit 3 of Team Off the Ball up against each other in a quiz of sporting factoids at the end of the week. Allow me to welcome tonight's contestants. Our first contestant today is made of mashed potatoes, chopped scallions, butter and milk, because he is the champ. Give it up for Adrian, who's your daddy Barry.
And a bit of brioche. Hey. Beautiful brioche.
We've got a tag team here. We've got Adrian and Con in
the brains of the family. Yeah, the brains of the family with his Lloyd Christmas haircut. Happy days.
Everybody's up against it today. Our next contestant didn't enjoy any Easter eggs at the weekend because of his dedication to his club football. He has one stowed away and ready to eat after his next club game, though, sometime around September 2023. Give it up for Tommy Rooney.
Hello, folks. That's spot on. Come on, Con.
What skills are you working on, Tommy?
At the minute, I
wasn't interested. I was joking. Don't answer me seriously.
Tree climbing, wall climbing, chasing the sun,
Did you see Reece McClenahan's burpees earlier? No.
Yeah, they're pretty intense.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've done too many burpees over the last couple of weeks, but Reece McClenahan's took it to another level.
What's the jersey?
It's a Maynooth Sigerson jersey. I can confirm that I did not play Sigerson football at all. I didn't play for Maynooth. It's my pal's Ryan McEnany's. I don't know how it ended up in my gear bag, but I got it about 6 years ago off him and he hasn't got it back.
God, Tommy, your true Gael credentials, by the way, have just taken a bit of a hit there. Not a Sigerson Cup footballer.
No, never played. Ended up taking a placement and off the ball instead.
Oh,
bloody hell.
It's our fault. It's our fault. You're like my 4-year-old. Oh no, not my fault. I didn't do that. Everybody else is to blame except me.
What's free advertising for the Roost there as well on the front of your jersey? So you're very welcome for that, everybody in the Roost venue. Our final contestant today is here for the pints, but there is no pint pouring around this round, so he's drinking in the middle of the morning for no reason at all. Give it up for Ger Gilroy.
Wow. I would just like to put on the record that I know myself and Tommy are going to get screwed over here because we beat you in the argument about the team of the decade. I just wanted everybody to know and understand that they need to go and check that out on our highlights pod. I presume we put it up on our GA pod as well. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. If we didn't, we will. We did. There you go. Owen took a paddling yesterday and is going to take it out on us now on the crappy quiz. So, Adrian, congratulations.
Yeah,
already.
Getting your excuse in early. Listen, you can't. I'm on 3 in a row. You can't. Come at the champ. You better come at the champ.
If you come at the champ,
truly
unprecedented, Tommy. Yeah.
If you come at the champ, you best not miss. Joe, you sound like one of the guys from Dazed and Confused, like hanging around the arcade saying, I got the high score in this game. Space Invaders is better than you at this. It's really strong stuff. And I'm truly being beaten down today. Right, I've actually deleted all the text here where I talk about the format of the quiz. As Ger Gilroy has frozen, will he return? Who knows? Will I ask him a question anyway and see if his blank staring face answers? Well, he is back. Welcome back. Let's move on. Round 1, the boring questions round. Never multiple choice. This quiz is all about 2004. We're back on the ears because Nathan's not here. Question 1 for you, Adrian. 2004 was the last Olympic Games before Usain Bolt. Who won the men's 100 metres in 04?
Justin Gatlin?
Correct. Justin Gatlin, indeed. Do you remember watching it? I presume you do. It's 2004 is a good, strong sports year for Ger and Adrian here, I'd imagine. Tommy, we'll see. You're up. Tommy, Ireland drew a blank at the 2004 Olympics with 0 gold, 0 silver, and 0 bronze medals. But can you name the controversial horse that had its medal stripped?
Oh, come on!
Waterford Crystal.
Correct. Well done, Tommy.
Thank you.
Ger, I've given you, it's almost as if you've done some study here. Your team of the decade, Tyrone, put up a gallant fight in their defence of Sam Maguire in 2004. Who knocked them out of the championship by a cool 4-point margin?
It's either Mayo or Laois. I'm going to go with Mayo.
Correct.
Here, hold on a second now.
What?
Quiz viewers might not know that there was a major edit that had to be done there because of feedback on the microphone. Ger Gilroy could have been Googling there when that edit was happening.
How could I have been Googling?
I don't know, but my eyes weren't on you as you were typing. You definitely could have been cheating.
Tommy is the king of cheats. He knows how these things work.
I have never cheated in a quiz.
Of course, a massive shock there. Mayo, not bad for a team that contributed to Kerry's Soft All Irelands around this time. Round 2, the Euro 2004 round. Ireland failed to qualify for this tournament, but the standard was pretty high, with Latvia taking part and Greece winning the whole thing out. This round will test your knowledge on that summer's tournament. Question 2 for you, Adrian. David Beckham skied that penalty over the bar in England's shootout defeat to Portugal that year. But who was the other England player that missed a penalty in that shootout?
Jesus.
Oof. Oh. Who? Oof. Stuart Pearce, Gareth Southgate, and maybe I'll just run with Gareth Southgate since I know he missed a penalty and can't quite remember exactly where it was.
No,
Euro 2004. Was it Darius Vassell?
It was Darius Vassell. Good research, Tommy.
Camera cuts to Schiffer. Tries for Sal.
Tommy, question 2 for you. Who scored Greece's winner in the final against Portugal?
Caristeas.
Correct.
Get in
At least you didn't do the whole thinking about it for a while. Or
Just call him Tommy Ingram.
Tommy, I was just about to say.
I haven't got the time to research here.
It could really could work for you. Arius Vassell. Angelos Caristeas. It's Caristeas, ladies and gentlemen. Question 2 for you, Ger. Who finished top scorer of Euro 2004?
Euro 2004.
Yes, that is
I remember almost nothing about this tournament. So the Greeks won it with a load of 1-0s, and they beat Portugal in the final. Is that right? It was in Portugal, was it?
Who knows? Who knows, Who knows?
Was it in Portugal?
We can't.
Are there a bunch of people? Is there a bunch of people who is the correct answer to this?
There are no clues.
No, and I know the answer.
Hang on a second. Are there multiple people who are the answer to this, or not?
No.
Okay, so I'm looking for one person.
You can't be asking subsidiary.
He's not going to get it. He's not going to get it.
God, I got my decades wrong here. Is it Miroslav Klose?
No. Anyone?
The Liverpool striker from Czech Republic, Milan Baroš.
Bollocks!
Baroš, yes.
Tommy really has. To be fair to you, Tommy, you really have researched this very well.
I backed Milan Baroš to be top scorer in that tournament.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's a long time ago now, Tommy.
How much did he win?
Good odds.
He was like 50 to 1 or something.
Oh, wow.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Or else I didn't back him, and that was the story. It was one or the other.
Yeah.
Round 3. The scores are Ger 2, Tommy 2, Adrian 1. Round 3 is the year of Jose round. 2004 was the year Jose Mourinho slid along his knees all the way to continental glory and into the manager's job at Chelsea Football Club. Let's see how well you remember his year. Adrian, Jose's profile skyrocketed in the spring as he took Porto all the way to the Champions League. Who was his opposing manager in the final?
That is a good question.
The knee sliding was a semi-final, was it?
The which one?
The knee sliding.
Could have been the year before, Adrian.
No, that was a quarter final.
The answer is Martin O'Neill, Adrian. Say Martin O'Neill.
I mean, this is like answering Kilkenny to hurling question because you're playing the percentage game. So I'll go with Carlo Ancelotti.
No.
Didier Deschamps.
Didier Deschamps, indeed. Jesus, you really have done your research. Monaco lost the final that year, and Didier Deschamps was their manager.
All right.
The only difference between Tommy and Charles Ingram is that, like, at least Charles Ingram had the dignity to fake act his way through it and kind of go, was it? No, it couldn't have been. Maybe it was. Deschamps. Tommy's like straight in.
I know. Tommy's 13 at this stage. It's like this is his prime. These are the years he remembers everything for.
Yeah, exactly. My first game in Old Trafford was the knee slide from Mourinho. Broke my heart.
God,
there you go.
Celtic Tiger was in its pomp, wasn't it? Jesus. Question 3 for you, Tommy. If Didier Drogba was the most expensive player signed in his first transfer window, who was Jose's second most expensive signing that summer? Now, this is something you surely can't have. This is not the list of things to learn before a quiz. So this will actually be your first real question, I would have thought.
So in his first summer, who was the most expensive signing in the first summer?
After Drogba.
Was it Crespo?
No.
Shevchenko?
Crespo was aged before that.
Yeah.
Czech.
No, Czech was that summer.
Was it Duffer?
Duffer was the summer beforehand. Duffer was before Jose.
Robin?
Yeah.
Robin, you're getting closer, though. Robin was the fourth most expensive signing that summer.
Matteo Kezman.
No, not Kezman.
He was $5.5 million.
It was Ricardo Carvalho.
Oh, wow.
That was a tough question.
So who was third?
So it was Pereira.
Wow, he spent a lot of money in one go.
Yeah,
that was nasty. That was a nasty question, though.
Good off season.
Tough one now, in fairness, but you've proved yourself. You know, be flattered by that sort of question. Question 3 for you, Ger. Name the Chelsea chief executive that unveiled Jose Mourinho at that famous first press conference.
Peter Kenyon.
Correct.
Come on.
I was going to say Peter Law first.
That's a gimme.
The sort of preemptive complaints from Ger have now seen him score 3 points from 3. Tommy's on 2 points from 3, and Adrian, you're on 1 point from 3. So it's funny how that works out.
This isn't in my nature, but I got the second question wrong. I'm calling foul. I've actually only got 2 right.
Oh God, yeah, good point.
Tommy, anything you want to?
Well done.
And to be fair, you're calling yourself out there. It's not in my nature.
Yeah, exactly. I'm aware. That's the joke.
Tommy, anything you want to tell us? Are you cheating?
Lads, you accuse me week on. I think the public know that I don't cheat.
Come on, Charles. Now's the time.
No.
Here, hang on a second. I just want to like, this is the first time in the history of this competition that anybody's been honest. There should be a bonus point for that at least.
Give you your point back.
Yeah.
You went. Good to see you go full Rainer Wolfcastle on this quiz anyway. But that certainly was the joke. And round 4 is the other stuff that happened in 2004. That's not sport round. Adrian, you're
Come
on. Name the artist.
Oh yes.
Balls.
When
I thought there's going to be an Oscars.
When the pimp is in the crib, Matt, drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
Oh,
drop it like it's hot.
Tommy, what are you doing? What have you got your hands on the computer for?
I was going to put it on. I was going to put the song on.
Everyone knows that song.
You're sitting beside the computer.
Oh,
okay,
I can't believe it.
Computer closed.
Can you even close it?
The Euros 2004. Carstairs. I want to see what windows are open.
Genuinely was trying to get. That computer's down.
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg.
Correct.
I just looked it up for like 45 minutes while we were getting distracted by Tommy. There's no way you knew that was Snoop Dogg, by the way. There's literally no way.
It was my first instinct, and there's literally nothing. I can show you my capacity to be able to Google anything at the table in front of me. There's a shepherd's pie and my phone, and that's it.
Well, one thing you could have done there, you could have had Shazam open on your phone as Owen read out the lyrics.
Move on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Charlie Ingram. Move on.
Recognizes perfection. You really have gone full major fraud here, which is shocking stuff, quite frankly. Tommy, to make it up to yourself, really, and to everybody you love, it's a question about the Eurovision. Who represented Ireland at the 2004 Eurovision? He was from Waterford and he won Eurostar.
Brian Kennedy.
No.
George something or other.
No.
The singer, the young lad.
Yeah, he was certainly a singer.
He was a kid.
Was he a kid? Well, he's
Mickey Joe. No, he wasn't from there.
No, he's done his own.
40 now, so he.
I thought Dustin was from Dublin. No.
18 years ago, so he's 22.
I thought Dustin was from Dublin.
16 years ago.
16 years ago, yeah, 24.
Tommy, you've got full Charles Ingram on us. Come on.
What's
his
name?
From the brink.
His name is Chris Doran.
All right.
Here.
Who would know that?
Sure. Again, like Jer's got the easiest. These questions are so unfair. You've got the easiest question here in this round again. Absolute disgrace, Jer. Which Lord of the Rings film won Best Picture at the Oscars in 2004?
Return of the King.
Correct.
Oh, here.
That's disgraceful. The questions are disgraceful.
111 Oscars, tying Ben-Hur and something else. Titanic for 11.
11?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Googling.
Exactly. I did a bit of research before this happened. I was like, the one thing that I prepared for was the Oscars, because sometimes that comes up. Like, he's going to ask me the question of the character played in Monster that Charlize Theron won the Oscar for, and I was like, is he? No, I won't look that up.
Well done. Good research. Round 4. Before we get into that, just to let you know, the scores are Jared 3, Tommy 2, Adrian 2. Round 4, the fun-free magic number round. Contestants get 3 points for getting the number exactly right here. And if no one manages that, the nearest contestant who doesn't go bust gets 2 points. I'm going to say that we can only accept the answer that's written on your paper. I'm also going to have to ask for your pens once the music ends. So if you don't mind, give us the following number. The number of times Jose Mourinho has won the Champions League as a manager, plus the number of times Muhammad Ali got beaten in professional boxing, plus the number of Olympic gold medals Michael Jordan has won, plus the number of NBA championship rings Michael Jordan has won? Your 30 seconds expire when Snatcher sings Bright Shiny Beats. You're going to need the number of times a Jose Mourinho managed team has won the Champions League, the number of times Ali got beaten in pro boxing, the number of Olympic goals won by Michael Jordan, and then also throw in the number of championship rings he has. All right, time is almost up. Going to need your pens down. Tommy's pen is down. Jared's pen is down. Adrian, you're up.
Pen down, yeah. So I've rejigged
17.
my answer there.
What have you got? 17?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared.
14?
Tommy.
Damn it, 11.
15 is the answer. So Jared gets Tommy gets to 1 point.
Damn it.
Adrian, you get nothing there. Let's go through those answers. The number of times Jose's won the Champions League.
3.
2. Inter and Porto. Muhammad Ali got beaten 5 times.
6.
Michael Jordan has 2 Olympic medals.
Had 2.
And he's got 6 championship rings.
Had 6.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is Jared's score. Tommy is on 3, and Adrian, you are on 2, which brings us on to the rapid fire round. The round that separates the men from the boys. It's the no team in particular, ridiculously easy, rapid fire round. The score you get in this round will be added to your score from the previous round. You get it. It's 40 seconds. You get one wrong, you get a minus point. You get one right, you get a plus point. Move on to the next person, etc., etc. We're starting with Jer because you're in the lead. Then we move on to Tommy because he's second, and then we move on to Adrian because he's got 2 points and he's last.
4-3-3.
5-3-3.
4-3-2.
5-3-2.
5-3-2.
Yeah, 5-3-2.
Should be 6.
Jared,
But I get back a point.
If you bottle this.
If he gets one wrong.
You're like 3-0 up.
If he gets one wrong.
Oh, suddenly, Tommy.
I would recommend you do this after the time starts, Adrian, so that we can count the clock down. You know, there's a few moves here I can do to stall things.
Right, Jerry, you ready?
Yeah.
Your 40 seconds starts now. What colour is Doncaster United's home shirt? White and what other colour?
Black.
No, red. What sport does Natalia Coyle compete in, Tommy?
Modern pentathlon.
Correct. What National League division are Sligo's footballers in?
Division 3.
No, Division 4. Who is the Armagh football manager currently, Adrian?
Kieran McGeaney.
Correct. What club does Ian Keatley play for?
Treviso.
Time.
Correct. What team did Ireland last play a test match against in rugby?
England.
Correct. Who won this year's Super Bowl?
The Patriots.
No, Kansas City Chiefs. Sure, name any player who tied for second at last year's Masters. Time's up.
Rory.
One more.
Oh, no, hang on. Okay. I've got an answer here. So,
come on, you gotta
finished second at last year's Masters. Who actually won the?
You gotta get an answer.
Time's up.
Okay,
that's a wrong score.
Point gone.
Rory McIlroy. Rory
McIlroy. No, that's incorrect.
Oh, come on. Is there not one more question, no?
Hold on a minute.
Brooks Koepka.
Oh, there's no more
Brooks
questions.
Koepka.
Hold on a minute. Just let me. I can't concentrate doing these difficult maths.
This is bollocks. I didn't have to answer that.
No,
the time was up. No. He said time's up, and I didn't answer it. So I didn't answer it.
It's an incorrect
answer. No, it's not an incorrect answer.
Point gone either way.
So
if you don't answer it, it's an incorrect answer.
Let's top this up. So, Jer, you finish up on 3 points. You just got 2 wrong. Tommy, you got 1 right, 1 wrong, which leaves you at 3.
Yes.
Come from behind. It's 3-all.
4.
And Adrian finished up. He went from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Minus 1, which is 4. Adrian wins.
Yes.
Like I said, it was fixed. It was fixed.
Champ.
How do you feel? I mean, it's just becoming, I'm getting used to it. That one was probably particularly sweet on, given that the other ones I've sort of led from tape to tape. This one had a bit of hard work to do there.
The other ones you won because you poured a pint of Guinness.
Jared was going to bottle it. We all knew it. And that's what happened. I didn't expect Charlie Ingram to go down with it.
Sligo. Jesus.
I think with respect, who finished second in the Masters last year?
Like, I mean, it was one of the most famous sports events of all time.
That's the look at the draw, lads.
Tiger's comeback. And you could have given me Koepka. Brooks Koepka was such an easy answer. Dustin Johnson, such an easy answer. Xander Schauffele, okay, not as easy. But the other 2 you should have got. Rory McIlroy, come on. You would have remembered Rory finishing second behind Tiger.
He got Kieran McGeaney, who's the Armagh manager. Well, what other crappy questions did you get? Who won the Super Bowl?
Come on.
Who won the fucking Super Bowl?
He got that wrong.
With all due respect, come on. Yeah, but it's like it's the
Listen,
anyway, what sport does Natalia Coyle play? What colour are Doncaster's jerseys?
That was a ridiculous question, Natalia Coyle.
What colour are Doncaster's jerseys? Who knows? Who's seen Doncaster play a match ever? What?
It's red. It's red and white. It's very. That's an obvious.
Simple, actually. Yeah.
I hope my music is.
Oh, believe me, it's pumping. It's pumping.
I feel a bit like the Dubs. Feel a bit like the Dubs.
Well, yeah. Well, the Dubs.
It'll be the Mano. It'll be the Mano next time round.
Right, okay. Next Tuesday, he has rage quitted on us. Looks like I won the game.
He's like the guy in the quiz. He's like the guy in the quiz on the two of them. You know, the lad who sat there at the end with his arms folded. Something going on.
Well, Adrian, it's just you and I, but thank you very much for joining me. You will be
it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure. You ran a seamless quiz as always. The questions were fantastic. I'd just like to endorse and compliment what a tremendous job you're doing. It's a tremendous job, seamless job. I've never seen a better quiz master.
Thank you very much. On that note, that is a crappy quiz for this week. Send in any questions. Tweet us at Off the Ball. Chat to you next week.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
There's a growing hostility towards cyclists. We're somehow seen as a nuisance, when in fact we're just people trying to get to work.
I've never ever gotten one bad word said to me about my sexuality, or from the opposition, or from, actually in one bad times nearly, the girl was marking me so tightly I was like, I have a girlfriend.
I'm not the person I was 10 years ago, and that doesn't worry me. I know I can play good enough golf.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon, only on Off the Ball.
OTB AM.
Adrian, who's your daddy Barry? The champ, words that we thought we'd never see uttered in our lifetimes. Up next this morning, we're getting into part one of our Classic Game Club. We're focusing on Michael Jordan ahead of the 10-part series coming our way over the next 5 weeks on ESPN. We're focusing on the flu game, which is the 1997 Game 5 in the NBA Finals between the Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz. The full piece will be available via podcast and on YouTube. But before we get into the Classic Game Club, Kieran Donaghy has a very important message to share.
Hi everyone, hope you're well. Just a minute of your time, please, if you can. I'm asking the basketball and the GAA community to come together in this one. My camp, which was supposed to start this morning, coaching loads of kids, obviously can't go ahead. So instead of that, I want to try and raise as much money as I can for the duration of the camp for a very special kid in County Laois, and his name is Dan. And the hashtag is Do It For Dan, and Dan needs our help. He needs 2.1 million for treatment in the States, and he needs it by the time he's 2 years of age. Now, his first birthday was 2 weeks ago, so we've got about 11 months to act on this, people. The great people of Ireland and Laois have already raised over 700,000, but we're just trying to put dents into that, and everybody is trying their own special way to get that done. This is a giveaway. I've jerseys. I've got 12 GAA prizes and 12 basketball prizes. My basketball prizes, my Adrenaline Sportswear Kobe Bryant Mamba inspired basketball jersey that I got for the kids for the camp that was supposed to happen today. So nobody has them jerseys yet, only me. I will be giving away 12 of them. And on the GAA side, absolutely loads of jerseys, Munster final jerseys, All-Ireland final jerseys, All-Star jerseys. Some nice jerseys, even other county jerseys there as well that I'm going to throw in. So I'll be giving them away. I have 2 books and I have 2 pairs of football boots that I wore in championship games. If you're size 13, probably entered, because you could probably still wear them, because I don't think they were worn that too many times. How to enter: like and share this post, donate to the GoFundMe account, take your screenshot, swipe up now, and comment basketball or football on all the Instagram, Facebook and Twitter messages you leave, because I'll be able to pick 2 different pools of prizes out of that. Best luck, everyone. Hashtag Do It For Dan.
You are very welcome to the Classic Game Club here on OTB AM. We're going all the way back to Game 5 of the 1997 NBA Finals. It's Chicago's 90 points to 88 win against the Utah Jazz. Utah's first appearance in the NBA Finals. Michael Jordan popping up with a casual 38 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals and 1 block, and 1 unbelievable dose of the flu. Kieran Donaghy, Ronan, Mullen, you're very welcome.
Oh, and how are things?
Very well. Lads, this was pretty enjoyable to watch back, I must say. The flu game, as it's known wider. Is that that's a Jordan t-shirt you've got on there, Kieran? So I presume this brings back very fond memories for you.
Yeah, I know. I actually watched 2 games in the lead up to this, the flu game that you sent me, and for last night, for some reason, I watched his final game. So it just sums him up really about how dogged he was, and yeah, as Ahmad Rashad just said there, I think that's Ahmad Rashad anyway. I think he just said like that when Jordan was sick or he had the flu, or if there was any bit of doubt about him, he seemed to be able to refocus and become even better, which a lot of people will play into the excuse, and they have an excuse there, and if it doesn't happen, it's fine. He almost wanted to go the other way with it. He wanted the excuse, and he still wanted to prove everybody that he was the best.
Like, are you a big Bulls fan at this point in the late 90s? Are you following all these things as they happen? Obviously, it's tougher to follow US sports in the 90s as opposed to now when we can get everything on Instagram every single morning.
Yeah, I was Sky Sport. I don't know who. I remember watching him in a friend of mine's house, James Friel. Whatever package of channels he had, I think it might have been on BBC or Channel 4 or one of those. But yeah, I remember staying in his house, having sleepovers as a probably 97. Yeah, I was about 14, so just kind of having sleepovers, but having sleepovers in the fella's house that had all the channels. So there was a few of us there. Watching the game and watching the game, because Jordan was at 14. Jordan to me was everything. So I was going to figure out a way to see it, even if it was hard to watch it live them times in Ireland. But yeah, I watched most of those games.
Ronan, this is actually your shout to go back and watch this game. Of course, we're going to be doing a lot of Michael Jordan content over the next 5 weeks or so with the documentary on ESPN. When you hear the flu game, what is it for you? Are you in the same boat as me, where it's like nostalgic and you almost become more aware of it the older you get?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this very famous commentary clip that Stuart Scott did on SportsCenter, and it does the rounds a lot, and it kind of glorified the whole game in my mind. And it wasn't until this occasion where I fully watched the whole thing back. And it's just amazing. And to denote it as the flu game is remarkable in itself, because like Marv Albert basically came out at the start of this broadcast and said, Michael Jordan has the flu. And everyone was like, grand. If Marv Albert said that, it must be true. So like, it's like Gabe Byrne on the Late Late Show saying something and the whole nation just takes it as gospel. Like, who knows if he had the flu or if he had, like, there's so many conspiracies that I think his trainer, Tim Grover, said he had food poisoning. Jalen Rose back in the Grantland days was talking to Bill Simmons. He kind of insinuated that maybe Jordan was out the night before. And then like there's obviously all these other conspiracies that he wasn't sick at all and he was just trying to play mind games with the Jazz. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of all that. I think it probably was like food poisoning or something.
Yeah, like it's interesting when you look at some of these things. Like you mentioned the Tim Grover comments there. So just to go through his quotes, but what exactly he said, because I always I used to take the Tim Grover thing as gospel. I still do. Like he says, so we order a pizza, they come to deliver it. 5 guys come to deliver this pizza, first of all. And I'm just, I take the pizza and I tell them, I said, I got a bad feeling about this. I just got a bad feeling about this. Out of everybody in the room, he was the only one that ate, nobody else. Then 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a call to my room. I come to the room. He's curled up in the fetal position. We're looking at him. We're finding the team physician at that time. And immediately I said, it's food poisoning. Guaranteed, not the flu. And I thought, he looks like a shell of a man. It's an incredible piece of acting, even better than Space Jam, if Michael Jordan isn't actually as sick as he says he is during this thing.
Oh, yeah. No, Jordan was sick. That's one thing for sure. Whether it's food poisoning or because the whole vomiting thing, you can't be a flu. Like, you don't really vomit that much if you have a flu. You're just kind of curled up and you're in the bed and you've got all those symptoms. So maybe the touch of a flu and then ate something funny as well, which made him get sick. But you can see it in instances where he hits a big shot and he's coming to the bench and he's literally, he's barely able to lift his hands up to high five the subs that are trying to meet him when he comes off. You can see every time he's lift up his hand, he's like, oh yeah, just let me get down here and sit and drink. And just even the way the team were around him, the way Scotty was around him in timeouts, there was no acting job. There'd be no need for an acting job. Jordan, it wasn't like Jordan had failed in big games before and he was kind of wanting to make up an excuse for himself in case he couldn't pull the Bulls over the line. You come up with it like, oh, I'm sick, and you start telling everybody you're sick and you act like you're sick, and then if you lose and you didn't pull it off, well, you can always say, I was sick. I don't think Jordan ever needed to go to that. No. He was in 4 finals before that and won all of them, and there was no difference that this was going to be anything else.
Yeah, like if there's one sports person in the history of professional sport that doesn't need to resort to this sort of thing, it's probably him. That being said, you do hear stories of other types of mind games that Michael Jordan played, but I think that's kind of more an unbelievable level of competitiveness, maybe a bit of trash talk. I think this sort of scheme is probably not in keeping with Michael Jordan, to be honest. So I'm fully buying that he's sick. I think there's enough evidence out there. And I think this actually just has real echoes of the 1995 Rugby World Cup when New Zealand allegedly get food poisoned. It's reminiscent of Tottenham Hotspur the day before the final day of the Premier League when they bottled fourth place when they all got poisoned. Of course, there are allegations that people with vested interests might have dropped dodgy food off to certain places. And I'm sure there are certain insinuations made about people in Salt Lake City who might have been Jazz fans, but I'm sure there was nothing untoward. It was just bad luck. But it's remarkable. Like, this is probably, would you say it's the one series where the opposition actually did have a genuine chance that even a fully healthy Michael Jordan going into that arena in Salt Lake City that night, you still gave Utah a chance. You still very much put this on the tightrope. It didn't need the flu for this to become a very exciting matchup, for example. It was 2-2 after all.
Yeah, and you can kind of see, and I'm sure we'll get to how the game played out, but it's almost as if the Jazz were in their own heads, and there was no reason for that because the Delta Center was rocking and like they were playing so well. Everything was against the Bulls. Pippen and Jordan hadn't been entwined at all in that series, and obviously Michael was sick in this instance. And you just wonder, like they were so cheap with their turnovers. They were basically letting the Bulls back into the game repeatedly. And for someone, if you just told someone to watch this game without knowing who won, there was nothing to suggest that the Bulls were going to win this game. I'd love to know. I was trying to find out for exactly how long in the game they were leading because it seemed like the Jazz were in front throughout. And every time the Bulls reeled them in, they kind of recouped a little bit. And I just kind of, it calls to mind my favourite movie, lads, Catch Me If You Can. And Frank Abagnale Sr. says to Frank Abagnale Jr., do you know why the Yankees always win? And it's because the other team's too busy looking at their pinstripes. And you have to think that, like, you're just playing against the Bulls. You know they're relentless. It's like that Manchester United reputational pressure in the 90s where you just know they have a reputation for coming back. And the Bulls, you just always had the sense that they were going to come back. And the Jazz knew that as much as anyone else did.
Yeah, I definitely go along with that. It's and like, as well as that, I think the element of Michael Jordan being ill and coming up against an opponent that you think is ill almost just crystallizes the importance of the player and would almost get into your head a little bit more. It may not have been intended to be a mind game, but I think it certainly worked psychologically in his favor hugely that he was supposedly going into this game unbelievably under the weather. So I think it's interesting in that respect. Like, when you look back at the context of this game, of course, it's the flu game. Michael Jordan being under the weather is the single most important thing to this. But there is a couple of other strands. We'll get to the Jazz in a moment because I think they're one of the more fascinating teams of that era. But before that, just one other Chicago player we should talk about at this point is Dennis Rodman. Now, first of all, he's hearing it big time from the Utah crowd throughout the game. Anybody who watches the game back will hear a lot of jeering every time he's on the ball. So Rodman is after making a few unwise comments in the build-up to this game. He was fined a record $50,000 during these finals for derogatory comments made about Mormons during the NBA finals. So I'm just reading from an Associated Press article from 1997. The fine, which followed Rodman's apology, was the largest in the history of the NBA and the third time the league had come down on Rodman in that particular season. So David Stern came out and he was like, I've indicated in previous actions that insensitive or derogatory comments involving race or other classifications are unacceptable in the NBA. In January of that season, Rodman was fined $25,000 and suspended for 11 games for kicking a courtside photographer. 2 months later, he was then fined another $7,500 for striking Joe Wolf of the Bucks in the groin. And then when it came to game 3, it was before game 3. It was after game 3, I should say, at Salt Lake City. He explained his poor play by saying, it's difficult to get in sync because of all the effing Mormons out there. And you can quote me on that. And he essentially repeats these comments when asked about the subject later and refuses to apologize until the following week when a penalty was pending. And he says, that was bad action on my part. So we retract that. He insisted that he didn't mean to insult an entire religion, say Associated Press. The people were giving me the finger and things like that. So you have this whole other element playing out where Michael Jordan is obviously the reason why we're watching this, but everybody hates Dennis Rodman. And I think as our remove here, looking back on it, we can kind of laugh on it. It is, innocently naive from Dennis Rodman. I know he didn't have a great record that season, but that's all it was. And it just creates this unbelievable cauldron in the Delta Arena that night.
Yeah, Rodman wouldn't be the wisest when it came to stuff like that, and where he was in his personal life at that time, you know, anything that he said was really taken with a pinch of salt, because he could have said that to a reporter coming out of a casino in Vegas the night before the game. So he was an enigma, so much so that himself, Pippen and Jordan never talked outside of the four lines. They never talked in team meetings. They never went into anything as such. You know, they were there to play basketball. They never talked outside of basketball. All their talking, you know, was kind of done just in the lines. Anything outside of that, trainings, meetings, just general hanging out with your teammates. Just Rodman was a different type of cat at that stage, and he was kind of finding himself. And this is a guy you don't remember that, you know, 7 years before this was inside in the Pistons with no tattoos, no dyed hair, a real retreat kind of guy. He got Defensive Player of the Year. He started crying uncontrollably, couldn't even get out his speech for being the best Defensive Player of the Year. A guy that wasn't highly touted out of college or high school. And he did it, and he was my favorite player, bar Jordan, even above Pippen or any of the rest of them. Any of his teammates really in Jordan's 6 championships. Rodman was the guy who I loved to watch because of the energy, the hustle, the way he'd throw his body on the line for any loose ball. And Jordan wouldn't have put up with the shit that Rodman was dealing with the drinking and the partying and the drugs at night time. He would never have put up with that, but he had massive respect for Rodman on the floor because he played against him. And he realized, yeah, this fella's going to get his 6 or 7 points, or his 5 points, or his 2 points, but he's going to grab me 20 boards. And I need 20 boards, because if you look at the centers they never had dominating centers. Whether it was Brian Williams, Luke Longley, Bill Winnington before that, or Cartwright and Livingston, all these guys. Like he never had a power forwards were his thing. He had Horace Grant, who was better offensively than Rodman, that wouldn't have been as good as a defensive player or a rebounder as Rodman. And you can see when Jordan gets the ball in these games, he really is score first. If you look at LeBron and these guys now, they kind of weigh it up and they're what are they? But Jordan, when he got the ball in these games, put his head down and said, "It's my job to score for this team, and I'm going to find a way, no matter what, whether I'm sick or indifferent. I'm going to find a way to score."
It's really interesting. Like, that is the contradiction of Dennis Rodman, because he's framed even now and retrospectively as this egocentric character, and yet on the court he's so selfless. Like, he's very much team first. And the other thing, which should probably be borne out in this documentary, that he's pegged as a fundamental character in the whole Bulls story, but he joined them really quite late, as Kieran alluded to there. I think he was 34 when he joined the Bulls. He was 36 in this game. So as was alluded to a lot during the commentary, you know, this team there was a lot of friction, and it was kind of coming apart at the seams. So you could kind of tell that this was the beginning of the end. And yet, like, they came through this game, showed a real team ethic to win this game, and obviously went on to close out the series.
There was also another element to Rodman on this particular week, and this was, you mentioned it, Kieran, Las Vegas. Las Vegas was almost his second home when they were playing in Salt Lake City. Now, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins was on the Joe Rogan podcast a short time ago, and he had this to say.
So I'm hanging out with the Bulls. It's the first time they're playing Utah. It's the series the Bulls probably should have lost, but they didn't. It's the famous game where the famous series where Michael had the flu and scored 36 points. I don't know if you know that game. It's like one of the most famous games. Michael legit had crazy flu and scored 36, and they won the game, and they won the series. So in between one of those games, Dennis knows some billionaire. There's a day off. We get on the billionaire's plane and we fly to Vegas. We stay out all night gambling. And this is Dennis, like, you know, rubbing dice on people's bodies and throwing the dice so drunk they're bouncing out of the, you know, the craps pit. And I mean, just total mess. And you're thinking, how is this going to help us win a championship? Very much a fan mentality. I'm thinking, you know, naively, I'm going to kind of rein him in. So we stay out all night. We get up, we never go to bed. We fly on the private plane back to make the morning press shoot around back in Utah. So we've only been in Vegas for like 8 hours. So 9 a.m. I'm sitting in the stands. I haven't slept at all. They do the shoot around, and Dennis walks up and says, "Let's go back." Go back where? The hotel? No, let's go back to Vegas. So after the morning shoot around, drove to the airport to fly commercial because now the billionaire's not flying him back again, and gets on a plane commercial and is giving me shit because I don't want to go back to Vegas with him.
Jesus Christ.
On the off day. And this is during the NBA finals. So through some sort of weird, you know how the world works, I end up somewhere. I go to play miniature golf or something in Park City, Utah, where the Bulls were staying. And Phil Jackson and his family had just happened to be there on like an off day. And Phil's given me the look of death because I'm the one responsible for Dennis going to Vegas.
The rock star dragged him to party, and
I'm
you
the bad
ruined
guy.
it. Oh, that's hilarious.
And I'm thinking, you don't understand. I'm the one who tell him not to go.
So that's from the Joe Rogan podcast. I think that was within the last year or so. Like I think David Brady tells a story whenever he's on the show talking about not being part of the Mayo team and going to Coppers the night before in All Ireland, which is fine because he's not part of the team. But as you say, Michael Jordan is depending on this guy to catch all his boards, and he's in Las Vegas and he goes twice in between games. Like, this is 1997. This is not some sort of Wild West kind of semi-professional league. This is millions of dollars on the line, playing against one of the most competitive beings that sport has ever seen, and he's just jetting off to Las Vegas. Like, it's incredible that it's incredible that Michael Jordan even had the patience to I don't know, keep this guy around or not allow the relationship to sour beyond the point where they tolerated each other, as you say, Kieran, that they were actually as okay as you can possibly be, given Rodman's tendencies to party a little bit.
It's mad. Like, it's bonkers. Like, it's just it shows you the time lapse of what's going on now versus what was going on then, that a fellow was able to do that and get away with it. The Bulls have been dealing with Rodman for 2 years at this stage. They know what he's like, and they really do. They leave him to his ways as long as he's getting 20 boards and 4 points a night and getting inside the head of every power forward in the league. And he was called a worm, was his nickname. And yeah, he had a way of getting in there and infiltrating with a bit of trash talk, with a bit of skullduggery, that kind of anything to win. He was, no wonder they hated him in Utah. And they hated him in Utah before he ever said anything about the Mormons. Don't worry. They would have hated I'm sure they would have hated the look of a guy like Dennis Rodman without Dennis Rodman having to say anything. But once he did say it, you're right, it did create that cauldron of effect. But yeah, just a sign of the times that a guy was able to go to Vegas after a morning shoot around to go drink and go party and gamble, and then come back the following day on game day. You know, like, what meetings were going on? Was there player meetings? Was there team meetings? You know, if you go away for an All-Ireland weekend, like, the backs are meeting and the forwards are meeting, and you kick around and you've this meal. Jesus Christ, I know you don't have time to go to Vegas anyway, that's for sure, if you were getting ready for an All-Ireland final. But Rodman found a way, and look, as long as Dennis came and delivered what he was supposed to deliver, Jordan and Co. and Phil Jackson overlooked at everything. And that's in most teams. Like, people that think these harmonious teams and everybody loves each other is great, there's always a bit where one fella is doing something that people aren't overly happy for, but if he's doing it and delivering on the promise, that's good enough.
Yeah, I think so. Like, we do have a series of things we get through in every game here. We haven't even started to talk about the game itself, and I'm not done with the context just yet, because I think this game, it's a clearly obvious fact that this game is not just about the Bulls. It's not just about Michael Jordan and his flu. This is an unbelievable spectacle because of what Utah Jazz are bringing at this point. Like, in terms of where this team is in your heart, Kieran, this Utah Jazz team, I presume they have a fairly special place, even though you're a Bulls and a Michael Jordan fan, because they're sensational. They're brilliant. They go right up there immediately when you think about the teams that haven't got that championship ring.
Yeah, look, they do, and they were a great team. They had a great coach. Jerry Sloan is a great coach, even though, you know, he was probably outcoached by Jackson in both those series at times. But he was really good, and I think the legacy of the Jazz team is in a way the legacy of Stockton and Malone. Like Stockton is 4,000 more assists than anybody else has ever had in the NBA. He's the most economical passer that the game has ever seen. He obviously had a guy in Malone who was second all-time scoring, so he had a guy who could put the ball in basket, and Malone was an absolute stud of a player. So yeah, their legacy is kind of, if they'd have got this one, or even if they'd have got the one the year after, they would have it would have cemented their legacy, that when they're mentioned, you'd say, oh yeah, they were two brilliant players. They were top assists and second in points, and they won a championship. Whereas what often has now is they're almost kind of separated, and kind of, Malone was the great scorer, Stockton was the great passer. But the thing that always rings true in all of this is they couldn't get them over the line.
Yeah. What's your reflection on this Jazz team, Ronan? It's very easy to break it down to two men, but in fairness, if you were to compile a top 30 all-time player, they'd both make the list, I would say. I presume Malone would probably sneak into the top 15. Stockton might even sneak into the top 20, but I would say certainly top 30 all-time NBA players, they're in the conversation. That's quite something to say about two players who don't have NBA championship rings.
Yeah, and Karl Malone, as frustrating as he was in this game, and we can probably get to it, talk about a game of two halves, it was crazy, but he's second only to Kareem in terms of all-time scoring. Only LeBron James is a more first-team All-Pro, so that's the kind of context we're talking about this man in. And if he had performed in the first half, or the second half of this game as he did in the first half, you're talking about one of the all-time great finals performances. But for whatever reason, I don't know if that, in Kieran's opinion, is that what separates the great players from the elite players, because Michael Jordan was always renowned as a closer, and it's all well and good, and it's also very important to be productive in the opening parts of games, but it really all comes down to the fourth quarter, and Jordan was almost never found wanting, and this is a very clear example of his direct competitor kind of crumbling a little bit.
Absolutely. I think we've set the stage nicely. That is the context of the flu game in 97. A cool 30 minutes there to sum up all the factors going into this. Let's get stuck into the game. And I think there's only one man who can actually sum this up better than either of us will in terms of reminding you of the moment of this game. Ronan has mentioned him. It's Stuart Scott of ESPN. And Ronan, I've seen you post this piece on social media before this week. It is fantastic. It's phenomenal. I'm only going to play a section of it, but go on to Ronan's Twitter to listen back to the full part. It's poetry in motion here. It's on SportsCenter, I think, isn't it, that night after the conclusion of this game. So here's what happened in the flu game.
Mike had 17 in the second quarter. Then vintage Jordan, the misdemeanor steal, one of 3 steals he had. Sick dribbling behind his back to Pippen. Pippen, no, Michael. Oh, yeah. Jordan had 7 rebounds, 21 in the first half. Seconds up in the second quarter, Brian Russell out-rocked the party that rocks your body. He had 11 points. He also had 3 threes. Jazz go in the locker room up 4. Third quarter, great Jazz movement. Malone to Antoine Carr, backdoor to Stockton. Carr had 6 assists. Michael in the third quarter, an ice pack, only 5 total points in the 3 third quarters in Utah. But in the fourth, Jazz up 3. Jordan, Trey, money. He came in shooting only 17% from 3-land in the playoffs. Game tied at 77. After the whistle, Jordan on the bench looking absolutely ill, and I'm not talking ill as in good. Minutes later, though, Jordan tells Russell, hey, yo, it's Michael, not Michelle. He had 15 in the fourth. Jazz not done. Loose ball scramble. Stockton from almost the same spot he hit the 3 in game 4 hits another one. He had 13. Jazz by 3. Late fourth, Utah up 1. Malone air balls the J. He was just 7 of 17 shooting. Jazz would have been up 3. Michael trying to hit the second free throw, does not. But Jordan, sick and everything, fights for the rebound. Out to Pippen. Pip to Mike. Michael, can't you see? Sometimes your threes just hypnotize me. Despite being sick and not being able to walk, Mike had 38 points. 17 seconds left. They got the dunk. Still, though, not enough. Karl Malone with 5 fouls. Cannot foul Pippen. Pippen ahead. Nice touch pass, Kukoc to Luke Longley. Bulls up 3. Utah down 3. Michael not even beginning to walk. No on the 3. Stockton with the ball. Scotty, very intelligent foul. Stockton shooting 85% from the free throw line in the playoffs. Misses it. Misses the first, effectively ending the game. Michael could barely put his arms up in the air. Unbelievable game by Michael Jordan.
Right. Beautifully summed up there. Moment of the match, lads. Like that Stockton free throw that he mentions there has to be one of the first things that comes to mind.
I think the moment of the match, there's a couple, like the pump fake shot to tie it at 77 apiece, where he kind of loans the ball to Pippen, Jordan gets it back and sinks this unbelievable three-pointer. And it kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier, where the Bulls were never quite out of it, and they always kind of kept within arm's reach of the Jazz, even though the Jazz were clearly the more formed team coming into this. And then obviously the closing image of this whole game is what will stick out in people's heads, is basically Jordan sinking the game-winning shot and then basically being carried off the court by Scottie Pippen. And it kind of speaks like Pippen carrying Jordan having carried him for about a decade. It was such a nice dynamic, and I think that's probably the moment that will stick out in people's heads if they get a chance to watch this back.
Yeah, probably is. Kieran, what are you going for here?
I kind of think the turnaround, like this was one the Jazz needed to win. They're at home. Jordan's down. He's injured. He's sick. You know, they got to get this one at home. Like, people don't often underestimate the power of home field advantage in GEA, but how important it is when you're playing in a Killarney if you're Kerry, or a Croke Park if you're Dublin, or a Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or a Simple if you're Tipperary. You know the place a bit better. You're more familiar with the surroundings. You've got the crowd really behind you that will drive you for that extra percentage and make it harder when you're trying to play against it. And I think this is a prime example. These, they were up 14 at the end of the first quarter, and they let the Bulls come out and score 34 in the second quarter. Like, you can't do that. You have your foot in their throat. Their main guy is struggling. He's sick. He doesn't have any energy. You got to really figure out a way to. The only guy that was going to get them going was Jordan. He was the only. He was the guy that you couldn't. And I don't think they double teamed him enough. And I don't think they went down on him. Like, every time he got the ball in the post, they waited till he put the ball in the floor before they doubled. When he got the ball in the post, they should have been doubling straight away and throwing it back out to Ron Harper or somebody else to try and beat you. But they left guys like Shannon Anderson, Jeff Harnasak, who's 6'4", who just can't mark Jordan. They left him mark him until Jordan beat him off the dribble, and then the help came towards the basket. So that first and second quarter turnaround from where the Jazz are so much up, and then that's wiped out by halftime. I'm sure at halftime there would have been kind of doubts on that.
So you would have question marks about Utah's defense, particularly in the third and fourth quarters.
I would, and it was a team, and I think it was a stubbornness thing out of Jerry Sloan, is that he was just a bit like, look, when maybe he thought that Jordan, maybe he read into too much that Jordan was sick, and they had to kind of that he was struggling so much, and that's why they gave him so much leeway. But a guy like Michael, with the fadeaway game he has, with his pull-up mid-range game, he's playing the triangle offense that's beautifully designed by Phil Jackson and Tex Winter, his assistant. But Tex used to get away to get Jordan the ball in his favoured position, which was his back to the basket, which he could turn and fade away towards the middle, or indeed the pattern that won the fadeaway towards the baseline. And if he gets that ball and you don't have a second guy running at him straight away, you're pretty much dead with Jordan in the mid-range games, certainly. And there's no doubt, like, people say to me, Jordan didn't shoot any threes, and he didn't have assists, and he didn't have many rebounds. If Jordan was playing today, he'd be as good as a three-point shooter. Not like Steph Curry or Klay Thompson, but he'd be as good as a three-point shooter as most, and he would take more. And when he had to take him, he was well able to score them. But in that day and age, like, pulling up in a fast break for three was still probably a bit sacrilege. So the game was totally different. But that was a huge turning point. But yeah, I would have a slight a grievance to, and I'm sure looking back now, Jerry Sloan, if he had his time again, would say, okay, I'm going to fire as many bodies at Jordan all game long, especially when he's sick, and just not let him get up anything, and make the Luke Longleys, the Kukocs, the Rodmans, the Pippins, the Kerrs carry them, or the Ron Harpers carry them. And unfortunately, when Jordan was absolutely dying, Jerry Sloan allowed him to have 38.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Yes, it is 9:47 on this Friday morning. You are listening or watching to OTB AM. Just a reminder what's coming up on AM this morning after 10 o'clock. We're not going off air because Mayo boxer Ray Moylette is doing 1,000 press-ups in 1 hour at 10 a.m. to raise €10,000 for the HSE frontline staff and Pieta House. We're streaming it live across Off the Ball and would love if you would join in and cheer Ray on, or if you can, donate to a great cause. His GoFundMe page is gofundme.com/1,000 push-ups in 1 hour, a dash between all those words, and the number one as opposed to the word one. We'll tweet out a link as well. Go follow us at Off the Ball, and we'll set you up with that. Right, we are up to Series 4 in our Better Call Saul player ratings. The current 5th series is set to come to its climax next week, and we'll have fresh ratings once that wraps. Kim Wexler, played by friend of the show, Rhea Seahorn, has been one of the breakout stars of the series. And here are the Season 4 scores. Kim Wexler, I'm giving Kim a 9. And Jerry, your point was about Kim perhaps being this wavering thing. I just want to get into the point that I disagree with you about first. I'm confused about her motivation for helping Jimmy McGill out in terms of some of his underhanded lawyering techniques during Season 4. I think her motivation is actually to help out her grieving partner. I think she is laying down and allowing Jimmy to have free reign on everything, any way they want to point that moral compass. His brother just died. We can point it that way. Let's go and do it. That clip we just heard earlier on, I want to do it. I want to keep doing this. This is for Jimmy, in my opinion. That's where I disagree with you.
I think she likes it. I think it was her idea to have the letter writing campaign. Jimmy was going to, so Huel gets arrested for assaulting the cop. I mean, there's a great little subtext there to the American justice system. The cop was not assaulted, and Huel does not deserve to go to prison for 5 years for that incident where he's Jimmy's security guard, and he sees somebody trying to take his phone. So he did exactly what he was supposed to do. But the American justice system is so screwed up that this man of color against this white cop is going to end up going to prison for 5 years. So there's a great little kind of like, this is how, that's kind of constantly threaded through. But they could have got him out by smearing the cop. That was Jimmy's off the top of his head plan. But the genius of the plan that Kim Wexler comes up with is, again, it's comic relief, but she instigates that. She also indulges all of the ideas that he has. And I think that I think Kim likes being a little bit wilder than working for the boring bank. Lets her be.
I think she's better than Jimmy quite often. I think she's actually better than him at being a con artist. I really think she's a natural at it, but I'm not sure if she feels that she needs it as much as Jimmy, or I don't think she sees it as much.
Well, she clearly doesn't. She's a brilliant lawyer, but she's a brilliant. You're right.
Sorry, but I mean in a drug sense. I mean in a buzz sense. I think Jimmy does get a thrill off it, and I think she does too. There's no question about that.
Just on a quick point there. I see what you're saying about that, and about her maybe possibly being better than it. I think that's partially why she's so kind of shook at the end when Jimmy's put on his big performance, and he's like, "Oh my God, did you see? I think I saw one asshole crying," and we've seen that she was crying, and she thought he was being serious. So it's kind of like there's levels to this, and he is sort of operating on the, this crazy level of manipulation. But on your idea that she's indulging him to make him feel better, I think there's kind of a bit of a counter to that if she actually thought what he was doing was self-destructive, she'd be stepping in to stop him from destroying himself. So I'd be more along the lines of what Jared's thinking, that she's kind of wavering a bit more towards the dark side. And it is funny because her scheme is funnier and possibly more outlandish than anything we've seen Saul do on this. Let's just get on the bus and go get some crayons and write a lot of letters.
The phones.
Yeah.
The phones are great.
Again, to come back to my favorite characters in the entire thing, the college kids, absolutely knock it out of the ballpark with the phone scene. It's a good point you make, Joe, but I wonder if she sees the only pitfall to their actions as a morally questionable thing, that she actually doesn't see this as something that could be detrimental to his well-being, detrimental to his safety, detrimental to his career. She actually feels we can get away with this, and she will indulge him, and really it's not morally right. But at the same time, it might not do any long-term damage. Perhaps, I can definitely see your point. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. But the kind of change that I can see from Kim as a function of what we experienced through Better Call Saul is actually, in the first couple of seasons, she is like our moral compass. She is a person who is kind of immovable at the start, wavers a little bit in the middle seasons to actually go towards the more Saul Goodman way of thinking. But I think in season 4, she becomes more than just a moral compass. She almost becomes a compass of where Jimmy's grief is at. And she is almost experiencing the grief that we feel Jimmy should be going through. She's experiencing and showing it way more outwardly. Like when we see that letter that Chuck has written to Jimmy, she's the one who gets emotional about that. And Jimmy is really cold in his response to that, cold to Howard. The reaction from Kim then, her patience must be remarkable. And I do fear about the toll that this will take down the line and how much they've kicked that can down the road. I think early in season 5, there's going to be something that might put a huge strain on that relationship.
And just something quickly just before we move on, if we are talking about this as the first series of the last 3 series, and Jared's talking about this idea of that Wire quote about sort of like the gods knowing what's going to happen, all these kind of doomed players. We know what happens to Saul, but something that's kind of been in the back of my mind, especially revisiting these series, is we've got no idea what happens to Kim. Kim's not an eye in the flash forwards. She's never in Breaking Bad. She could hypothetically be in Breaking Bad. She could hypothetically be somewhere aiding Jimmy Saul down the line. But I think, that's something I think that's going to be, as well, the fact that, so she doesn't have to be the Avatar anymore because we fleshed out the world. I think that's part of why the show can get more interesting, is they don't need to kind of coach us and they can allow her to be more interesting. So I think it's,
Good point.
Giving her a 9, and definitely, I think that's something that I'm definitely going to show now, is I had presumed she wasn't going to survive in this universe, into the Breaking Bad universe, but now I'm not so sure, and I'm actually just wondering where they're going with it all.
Okay, sorry. So you think she still might make it out alive? I'm not sure. I kind of keep waiting for this shocking development where something horrible happens to Kim, because she doesn't make it to Breaking Bad, or she's not in Breaking Bad. So, sorry. Now you go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like "I love you." That whole scene is about them drifting apart and their relationship going completely separate ways. And the bit where he changes his identity, where she's like, "Well, who am I? Who am I with here? Is it Saul Goodman? Are you Jimmy McGill?" I think that it is absolutely all set up for them to break up, and I assumed that that's what was going to happen at the end of this season, and that was going to be the end of her. Primarily because Owen had told me that there was only 5 seasons. Joseph, I don't know if you know this, but I was like, "Oh Jesus, we're heading into the last season now, lads." And then, 2 nights ago, I was like, "Oh, by the way, it turns out this." Yes. Oh, this is the second last episode ever. And then I was like, actually, no, there's another season. All right.
Oh, coming next year. See, I don't Google shows that are currently airing that I'm not up to speed on, because you will see spoilers. It'll be like, is X character really dead, or something like that. And I think I've already got a spoiler for season 5. So I
think I'm basing there being a 6th series on Owen saying it as well. So maybe that's not true. Who knows?
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.